Shadow Slave. Chapter 451 to 451. Bone Weave. 1013 words. Bone Weave. Sunny let the sound off echo in his mind, overwhelmed by a feeling of savage joy. He didn't know what that attribute gifted him, yet, but was certain that it would be something special. The blood weave had saved his life so many times, after all. And after his encounter with the Mordant Mimic, Hell learned that having strong bones was as important as shaving tenacious blood. Shifting his gaze away from the runes, Hess stared at the tone of his hands, then made a fist. This was the arm that had been shattered by the vile creature, and then slowly healed while he was falling into the sky below. Even though Sunny had already been able to oust it for the past few days, I still feel weak, awkward, and slightly damaged. But now, it was as good as new. More than that, actually, it was better than ever before. All of his bones felt much more durable and resilient, stronger. His joints seemed to be slightly more agile, too. His teeth felt as how they could crush stones and cut through metal. The strangest change, however, happened to his fingers. It wasn't very apparent, though, on the surface, it simply felt as how they had grown subtly more sensitive, the tactile feeling of touching things becoming deeper and richer. However, Sunny suspected that the true change was more profound. He just didn't know what it was, exactly. Blood weave had altered his eyes in every fundamental way, so bone weave had to have a lot of promise. Hair in his fingers across the soft surface of the puppeteer's shroud, vividly feeling the silken fabric slide against his skin. Single quote. Neat. Then, Sunny stretched his limbs, sensing their newfound agility. He was already weirdly limber due to practicing shadow dance, which demanded the utmost level of pliability from the practitioner's body. Now, however, it was even further enhanced. Satisfied, Sunny turned back to the runes and read. Attribute, bone weave, attribute description. You have inherited a part of Weaver's forbidden lineage. Your bones have been altered and imbued with steadfast temperance. Head tilted his head, stunned by the somewhat expected, but still profoundly fascinating piece of information he just received. Weaver's legacy, severed arm had actually belonged to the mysterious demon of fate. It was Weaver who had snuck into their siblings' tower while bearing a terrible wound, sliced off their rotting limb, and then fashioned a new one from the parts scavenged from the broken porcelain dolls before sewing it into their body with diamond strings. It was Weaver's footprints that Sunny had seen in the basement of the great obsidian pagoda. Head trembled. Even though Sunny had seen many incredible things and lived through many unlikely events, both wondrous and terrifying, he suddenly felt awe. It was asked how he was suddenly in the presence of divinity. Demon of fate had been taught this dark island, had walked the same halls that Sunny walked, and breathed the same air. The sharp needle infused with remnant traces of their blood was currently inside his storage memory, as well as diamond string they had used to sew a new arm to their body. Unlike the miraculous black mask, the needle was not a memory either. It was the actual thing, but most awful, Sunny had swallowed Apheline's bone of the divine being in question. Crazy, this is crazy. Head blinked a few times, then suddenly thought, was this how Neff felt when she first met Kai, I wonder. What a random and ridiculous thought. Then, a slight frown appeared on his face. Why would Weaver secretly come to their younger brother's abandoned workshop? What was the harrowing rot that had been spreading from their wound, and what manner of creature could have wounded them so terribly? What could even damage a deity? Sunny had so many questions. Luckily, the description of the bone weave was not over. Several strings of runes still remained. Head concentrated and read. Opening square bracket. When children of the unknown rebelled against the gods, Weaver was the only one to refuse the call of war. Despised and hunted by both sides, they disappeared. No one knew where Weaver went and what they did, until it was too late. Sunny shivered. A few things became more clear from this short description. Firstly, it cemented his suspicion that, at some point in time, the 7 demons, children of the mysterious unknown, who were also strangely described as having created themselves, had waged war against the gods. Or, rather, 6 of them, since Weaver apparently decided to not join either side in this conflict. Secondly, Weaver's reluctance to participate in the war had landed them in big trouble with both the gods and the other demons, unsurprisingly. One side would have seen the demon of fate as one of the enemies simply by virtue of them being a demon, while the other would have seen them as a traitor. For that same reason, that could potentially explain how Weaver ended up being ghastly wounded, and why they had to sneak into the obsidian tower in secret. These 2 pieces of information were extremely fascinating, but it was the third one that gave Sunny pause. No one knew what Weaver did, until it was too late. That sounded suminous. That made it seem as how Weaver alone had turned out to be more terrible than both the 6 demons and the 6 gods combined, in the end. What exactly had Weaver done? Sunny really wanted to talk now the answer to this question, and not only out of idle curiosity. He was carrying 2 parts of Weaver's lineage inside of him now, after all. The lineage that was described as being forbidden. Was the reason for that connected to what Weaver had done? Just as always, the answer Sunny had received brought him as worm of new questions. Curses. With ASIGH, Hetties missed the runes and stood up. There was no sense in pondering about that now, not without finding more information, both about the demons and the gods. After all that had transpired, he was incredibly tired and hungry, but mostly hungry. With a resentful sigh, Sunny gave Saint a sign to follow and headed back toward the first level. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 452 to 452, Above and Beyond. 1344 words. Several days later, Sunny was sitting on a piece of broken furniture in the central hall of the first level of the obsidian tower. The covetous coffer stood near him, its lid open and its sharp teeth revealed. He was holding the cruel sight in his hand. The silver blade of the somber spear was incandescent with white radiance, infused with divine flame. Sunny was currently using said divine flame to roast a piece of repulsive, slightly rotten black meat. That was the last piece of mimic's flesh he had stored inside the coffer before taking a plunge into the ocean of merciless stars. Saint was also nearby, staring into the distance with her usual cold indifference. Head glanced at her, then sighed. Sorry that I haven't fed you in a while. The shadow did not react to his words in any sort of way. Sunny continued to talk, though, unbothered by the taciturn demon's apparent lack of interest. Hey, that's not true. It's not my fault. Blame my incredible luck, instead. What can you do? The memories I find are just too incredible. How can I let you eat them? I can. Head grinned, then threw a dubious look at the sizzling black meat, and sighed. I guess it's stone. Dismissing the cruel sight, Sunny brought the meat to his mouth and took it out of it. Attitude, an absolutely miserable expression appeared on his face. Quote. Ah, that's the stuff. I tell you, Saint, this meat can easily be described as absolutely delicious. Simply toady for, even. I pity you, really, for being unable to taste. Oh damn it, how can anything be so? My delicious cooking. It's the best mimic steak you can possibly eat in a lifetime. Just a single bite can really change your life. For the worst, at least chewing the damn thing was much easier now. Before the acquisition of bone weave, eating mimic's meat felt like gnawing on an old leather boot. It felt pretty much the same now, but Sunny's teeth were different. They were able to slice and cut through the tough meat of the devil with ease. Plus, it wasn't raw. That was already a reason to celebrate. Feeling his eyes staring up from disgust, Sunny glanced at Saint and forced a smile to remain on his face. Are you left speechless by my culinary skill? Fair. However, in the next moment, a voice suddenly resounded in the darkness of the obsidian tower. Quote. You actually survived. Sunny choked on a piece of the vile meat. For a second, he thought that his loyal shadow had only been pretending to be mute all this time, instead simply choosing not to speak to him. But no, he recognized the voice. Sadly, it wasn't Saint. It was Mordred. The Prince of Nothing was back. Thank gods. Sunny had been burdened by being all alone on the dark island much more than he was willing to admit. Even though he didn't trust the mysterious voice, He felt relieved to hear it. Swallowing the meat, He took a sip from the endless spring, then looked around the hall and said, as you can see, although, being the honest tofu young man that I am, I have to admit that it wasn't easy or pleasant. In fact, I can hardly believe that I survived myself. He glanced at his body, which was still in an sorry state. His burns were healing, but much slower than they would have usually healed. Even though the divine flame had not touched him directly, just the heat radiated by it was enough to leave long-lasting traces that even blood weave wasn't able to remove fast. Mordred remained silent before speaking again, as she usually did. When his voice appeared, it was full of genuine surprise. You really found the rift in the ocean all flames. Sunny shrugged. As it turned out, I was more or less falling toward it the whole time. But even then, I almost burned to death trying to reach it. My most powerful memories were heavily damaged, and I only survived thanks to a bit of fluff. Which was technically true, although not nearly all of the truth. The mysterious prince hesitated, then asked, quote, Where are you now? Sunny tilted his head. How much of my surroundings can I perceive, I wonder? The first thing that Mordred had ever said to him was ask why it was so dark, so I probably could see something, at least. Can't you see where I am? The voice answered, most likely honestly. I can see a big hall filled with ancient, broken things. That doesn't tell me a lot, though. Makes sense. Sunny nodded, feeling the pressure of the flaw building up in his soul, demanding for him to deliver an answer. He gestured at the interior of the obsidian tower. Well, beyond the false stars, the void continues for who knows how much further down. But some distance from the flames, there is actually a single island floating in the emptiness. There is a magnificent black pagoda on that island, which looks like the exact copy of the ivory tower. That is where I am right now, inside that pagoda. Then, Sunny scratched the back of his head and added, but anyway, how come I can still hear you? Haven't you told Matt that your voice would not reach beyond the stars? Mordred sighed. That was what I thought. Luckily, I seem to have been wrong. After a short pause, he said in a strange tone, the ebony tower, so it does exist. Sunny blinked. I guess it's one way to call it. Then, however, a complicated expression appeared on his face. Wait, you knew about it? The mysterious prince remained silent for a bit, then answered. That is what I had been trying to find before I couldn't shark anymore. There were some hints that a duplicate of the ivory tower exists somewhere in the sky below. I hopped to reach it. Sunny chose his next words cautiously. Oh, really? What else do you know about that place? Mordred thought for a few moments, then answered wistfully. It is said that every powerful being came to the shattered land after it had been destroyed by the Lord of Light. Back then, the sky below was not as boundless, and there were much more fragments of divine flame still burning in its empty darkness. That being wanted to harvest those flames. Suddenly, a lot of small details about the dark island and the obsidian tower became much clearer. Sunny already had suspicions about the true purpose of this place, but now, they were confirmed. The ruined machines outside the pagoda, the blackened work table, the massive glass vessels covered with soot from the inside, the silver brazier. The prince of the underworld had not truly lived in the magnificent pagoda. It was not his home, just a station he had built in the ocean off flame, which had been much larger back then, to harvest some of the divine fire. Why he had need of it, Sunny did not know, but he suspected that the prideful demon had either succeeded in his purpose or failed, and that was why he eventually left and sealed the obsidian tower, which then stood abandoned for thousands of years. And at some point during that time, another child of the unknown had come here for a short while, although their purpose was very different. This revelation came and went. There was a question burning in his mind that had nothing to do with such distant past. Instead, it was much more pressing. Sunny swallowed another piece of meat and asked casually, harvest divine flames. Very interesting. Was that why you wanted to come here, too? Or had Mordred been after something else? Was after something else? The lost prince laughed. No, not really. In fact, I wasn't that interested in the ebony tower itself, to begin with. Sunny frowned. Why did you want to find it if you weren't interested in it? Mordred sighed. After a long pause, he answered, his voice dark and full of suppressed emotion. What I was interested in was not the copy, but the original. The ivory tower. The two are supposed to be connected somehow. iPhone finds the connection. They might just be able to reach past the crushing and step foot on the heavenly isle. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 453 to 453. Shrine of Stars. 1,170 words. Sunny remained silent for a while, thinking feverishly. A bridge between the two towers. That was his chance to escape this dismal place and return to the real world. The problem was, he had no clue what this connection Mordred had told him about was. However, he had an idea. In the past several days, Sunny had explored the rest of the obsidian of the ebony tower. He had made a couple fascinating discoveries, but most of it was now full of nothing except dust and rubble. Pretty much everything inside the pagoda disintegrated due to the onslaught of time after he had opened its gates. The most promising and mysterious of his finds, though, was situated on the last level of the tower, an asmal circular hall that housed nothing except for a graceful stone arch, which stood lonesomely in its center and looked like a misplaced, empty doorframe. The most intriguing part about the arch was that it was surrounded by a circle of runes, almost like the gateway in the Crimson Spire had been. In fact, that was what Sunny assumed it owed, an inactive gateway. For that reason, he had spent these days trying to find a way to activate it. He had poured shadow essence into the arch itself, as well as every corner of the hall. He had studied the unfamiliar runes, hoping to either find a way to translate them or maybe discover a place where they had been damaged, thus rendering the arch useless. But nothing had worked, yet. The information provided by Mordred instantly changed his perception of the arch, though. If what the lost prince had told him was true, then maybe it wasn't a gateway to the real world. Maybe it was an entrance to the magical bridge connecting the ebony tower to its ivory counterpart. Still, how was he supposed to make the damn thing work? With a deep scowl appearing on his face, Sunny asked, if this place is really connected to the ivory tower, then how would one go about using that connection? Do you have any ideas? There's something that looks like a portal here, but it doesn't work. I tried to 100 times, to no avail. Mordred thought for a bit, then said uncertainly, have you tried saturating it with essence? Sunny grimaced. Of course. What, Amy? A fool. That was the first thing I attempted. He hesitated for a few moments, then voiced something that had been keeping him worried for a while. Maybe it requires some sort of fakey to be opened. The voice remained silent for a long time. Then, Mordred said, no, I didn't think so. Sunny raised an eyebrow. Really? Why? The lost prince answered casually. Because only doors that can be kicked open require locks and keys. The master of this place wasn't someone who needed such things to keep uninvited guests away. Huh, makes sense, I guess. He seems to talk now a lot about the prince of the underworld, though. If that knowledge of demons was really scarce. Sunny sighed. So, how do I activate the connection then? Mordred considered the question for a second or two, but said with a hint of doubt in his voice. The creator of the ebony tower was a builder of things. Agonious artifacts, but also of practical sort, from what little knowledge of him remains. He would have probably used whatever was at hand, and went for the simplest solution. Builders didn't like overcomplicated things, after all. Sunny considered his words. The simplest solution. A pseudo-idea appeared in his mind. With a thoughtful expression, he took another bite out of the piece of meat and chewed it thoroughly. The lost prince politely remained silent while Sunny ate. After a while, however, he suddenly spoke. Oh, by the way, I didn't want to worry you, Sunless, but there seems to be a powerful nightmare creature standing right behind you. Sunny almost choked again. If not for the fact that he was looking both forward and back at the same time with the help of the shadows, he would have jumped and summoned the cruel sight immediately. But Heck knew that there was no one behind him, except for Saint. He swallowed the foul meat, then smiled weakly. Curses, you almost gave me a heart attack. That's not a nightmare creature. Can you differentiate aerial demon from an echo? Mordred remained silent for a bit, then said with amusement, she is your echo. Fascinating. Sunny frowned. What is so fascinating about it? However, there was no answer. The mysterious prince was gone once again, disappearing as suddenly Ashahad appeared. Usually, Sunny was irritated by this annoying habit of his, but this time, he was glad. Sunny couldn't wait to go back to the 6th level, but didn't want Mordred to see what he had found on the level before. He still didn't trust the lost prince, even though Mordred had been nothing but helpful up until now. Extremely so. In fact, Sunny didn't know if would have even been alive without his guidance. Later, if managed to return to the sanctuary in one piece, I'll start trusting him then. A little, maybe. Finishing Yufa's meal, the last he was going to have in a while, Sunny stood up, stretched, and headed toward the stairs. After he had received the bone weave and rested, Sunny explored the rest of the 3rd level of the ebony tower. However, he had not found anything of note there. He also had not discovered any more traces left behind by Weaver, which disappointed him a great deal. The fourth level, however, was much more interesting. The central hall of it was fashioned into a vast, somber shrine. At the center of it stood an altar cut from a single slab of black onyx, and behind it was an incredibly beautiful statue of a young woman dressed in a flowing tunic, her face obscured by a veil. The young woman was holding a star in one hand, and apple lightning in the other. Sunny was pretty sure that she was none other than Storm God, also known as Goddess of Black Skies. Deity of the oceans, of the depths, darkness, stars, travel, guidance, and disaster. Which was really interesting. Why would the prince of the underworld build a shrine to his sworn enemy at the very heart of the Ebony Tower? Their relationship, it seemed, was not as simple as Sunny had thought. He had been much more interested in the altar itself, though. After finding the shrine, Sunny had tried to place magical coins on the onyx surface, and even spilled a bit of his blood on it. But this time, the gods had not answered. The coins, too, simply remained laying on the altar instead of turning into shadow essence. It seemed that the altar was not mystical at all. In fact, as far as altars went, this one appeared to be quite mundane. Sunny had quickly lost interest and continued exploring the Great Pagoda, and he had not been disappointed by that decision, because there was something very, very important on the 5th level of the Ebony Tower. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 454 to 454. Hope. 1,171 words. The 5th level of the Ebony Tower had almost killed Sunny. It was completely empty, its black walls drowning in darkness and unadorned. There was no dust, nor ruined pieces of furniture, tools, or strange metal devices. Not even lanterns. There were, however, countless runes carved into the walls themselves. And almost all of those runes were of the kind that radiated a sickening, dire sensation that made one feel as how their mind was breaking apart. The same mysterious runes that the spell used to describe the unknown, and that Sunny had seen written on the floor by the prisoner of the small cell that was hidden under the ruined cathedral in the Dark City. Back then, looking at them dealt a heavy blow to Sunny, but he persisted and was eventually able to read a single phrase that the prisoner had written, unlike everything else, an unfamiliar script. Hail Weaver, Demon of Fate, firstborn of the unknown, 1/2 to last level of the Ebony Tower. However, there were much more of the terrible runes. And most of them seemed far more intense, far more powerful. When Sunny had first set foot into the dark hall, he helped and jumped back, then rolled down the spiraling stairs all the way back to the shrine of the Storm God. Good thing his bones were now much more hardy. Eventually, however, he had returned to the Hall of Runes. Sunny knew that looking at the vile writings could destroy his sanity, maybe even outright kill him, so he had done so with his eyes closed and while leaving the shadows behind, so that they, too, could not see the ancient walls. Even then, he felt a terrible pressure constantly assaulting his mind. He was not going to leave without learning at least something from this chamber of secrets. Where else would he ever be able to study writing left behind by an actual demon? So, he tried to limit the scope of what he saw and glance at the obsidian walls, one little section at a time. The experience was nothing short of horrid, but at least tolerable, and only when Sunny summoned Weber's mask was able to look at the portions of the hall without feeling like passing out or falling down in a fit of convulsions. The forbidden runes turned less dreadful, but did not give up their secrets. He didn't know their language, after all. The spell, too, either refused or failed to translate them. His exploration, however, was not for naught, because, while slowly moving around the dark hall, he discovered something extremely valuable. It was a map, or Arthur, as semblance of phone. Both the runes and the images constituting the map were cut into the stone, their lines smooth and deep. Sunny did not know what tool the prince of the underworld had wielded to leave these markings behind, but imagined him simply using his nail to cut into the indestructible stone that even divine fire couldn't destroy. At the center of the map, jagged mountains were depicted, shrouded by mist. Directly south of them, an island with a familiar silhouette of a graceful pagoda floated above flames. Even further south, separated from the mountains by a vast emptiness, was a mighty castle. Far to the west, a snowy peak stood near a fuming volcano, and nestled between them was Anarch Bridge. To the southwest, Astran's ship floated on ghostly waves. Southeast of the mountains, divided from them by a long stretch of nothingness, a perfectly symmetrical pyramid was cut into the obsidian wall. And lastly, to the north, further away than any other image, above all of them, was a familiar shape. A fearsome mask stared at Sunny, crowned with 3 horns. Weber's mask. The map was strange, however, because the areas it depicted seemed disconnected, somehow. There were no borders, no terrain, no measure of distance between them. The ideas of north, south, east, and west were only something Sunny had assigned to the map out of habit. Truly, it could have been the exact opposite, or impossible to apply to the logic of the map altogether. But at the same time, ITFIT with the geography of the dream realm Ashik knew it, somewhat. Each of the images had an inscription near them, written in a runic language that Sunny had trouble understanding. It was similar to the one used by the spell, but also different enough to make translation either impossible or difficult. But even without reading the inscriptions, he easily guessed what the images meant. The mountains depicted in the center of the map were, of course, the Hollow Mountains. Even if the image itself was only familiar, their closeness to the Ivory Tower cemented the conclusion. The Ivory Tower, of course, represented the Chain Isles. The castle to the south had Toby Bastion. Although Sunny had never seen it with his own 2 eyes, Heck knew its silhouette and appearance from childhood, just like any other human in the real world. Its likeness was the stage for countless dramas, movies, and webtoons, after all. Similarly, he recognized the great stone bridge nestled between a snowy peak and a raging volcano. It was the road to Ravenheart, the great citadel ruled by Clan Song. Knowing the position of Bastion and Ravenheart, it wasn't hard to surmise that the ship sailing on the ghostly waves represented the Stormsia, where the citadel of the 3rd Great Clan, House of Night, was located. Sunny had no idea what the pyramid to the east represented. The 7th image, however, was rather clear. It meant Weaver. By knowing who IT described, he was also able to translate the inscription near the depiction of the mask. It read, Fate. There was another symbol near it, though, which meant something akin to a question mark and inquiry. So, actually, it was Fate. Basically, even the prince of the underworld had no idea where his eldest sibling lived. And this was what the images were, in Sunny's mind. They represented the 7 demons, or rather, their domains, which was nothing short of tantalizing in Andof itself, but also meant several things. Firstly, that the 3 great clans had inherited their citadels from 3 demons, or at least built their strongholds in the regions of the dream realm where demons had once dwelt. Secondly, that the underworld, most likely, was situated beneath the Hollow Mountains. This death zone was a very dark and cavernous domain to which the prince of the underworld had retreated after his conflict with the goddess of the Black Skies. And lastly, that the ruler of the beautiful and prosperous land that had invoked the wrath of Sun God and doomed their kingdom to destruction and eventual transformation into the Chain Isles was a demon as well. Coincidentally, the inscription cut into the stone near the image of the Ivory Tower was the only one after that off Weaver's that Sunny was able to translate, since the runes closely resembled those usually used by the spell. It was desire. The other meaning of the runes, however, was hope. The Ivory Tower had once belonged to the demon of hope. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 455 to 455. Doorway to Heaven. 1,073 words. That revelation had given Sunny a lot to think about. The demon of hope, or desire. A demon whose power was most likely tied to souls and mind. What act could such a being have committed to cause Sun God to destroy their whole domain? And what had happened to that being after? Just as usual, there were no answers. Sunny was slowly learning more and more, though, for now, the pieces of information he had earned were scattered and disconnected. But I've continued to slowly accumulate knowledge. One day, they were going to start clicking together. And then, what terrible and wondrous truths would you uncover? Enough to make up for a lifetime of fleas, perhaps. Apart from inscriptions dedicated to Weaver in the Ivory Tower, Sunny failed to translate anything else. He had, however, memorized every little detail of the unfamiliar runes describing the Hollow Mountains, Bastion, Ravenheart, Aship sailing on the Stormsia, and the mysterious pyramid to the east. I'll have to visit Teacher Julius when I'm back in the real world. Stop now, something about this script, right? Thinking about the map, Sunny entered the rune hall, kept his eyes closed, and walked to the entrance to the stairwell leading to the 6th level of the Ebony Tower. The last one. When he entered the chamber of the Stone Arch, he sighed with relief. The pressure emanated by the terrifying runes was finally gone, leaving his mind at ease. The headache caused by them, however, was going to persist for a few more minutes. Sunny sat down, leaned his back against the wall, and stared at the arch while waiting to fully recover. The highest level of the Great Pagoda was not very large, in comparison to the 6 others. It was just one big hall, circular in shape, and almost completely empty. The only thing inside of it was the arch itself. It was tall and composed of the same material as the rest of the Ebony Tower. In fact, the arch didn't seem to have been built. Instead, it was almost as if it had simply grown out of the floor, without any seam separating it from the black stone. It looked like a doorway that someone had put in the middle of the chamber, for some reason, and then forgot to tuck a door to it. This was Sunny's only hope of escape. He stared at it for a long time, thinking about how to make the portal work. In the past, he had tried a lot of things to activate the arch, as well as studying the circle of runes surrounding it. But nothing he had done accomplished anything. His recent conversation with Mordred, however, had given Sunny an idea. What had Mordred said? That the prince of the underworld was somewhat of a divine smith, a builder of things, but also of the practical sort. That he would have used whatever was at hand, going for the simplest solution. That more or less confirmed what Sunny knew of the prideful demon already. After all, Satan and her kin had been created by the prince of the underworld. In retrospect, Sunny had completely failed to understand the magnitude of that accomplishment. To create a living being from nothing, a whole race of them, really. That did sound like something that only a god would be able to, didn't it? The prince of the underworld, however, was not a god. He was a demon, a lesser deity. Was the creation of Satan and her people his way of showing the true divinities that he was in a way inferior to them? Or was he guided by some different ambition? I wonder how the gods reacted. Teacher Julius had described demons as terrible beings that inspired fear because of their unknown origins and strange powers. What happened after one of them had accomplished something that was supposed to be in the purview of only the gods? Saint's description, back when she was an echo, said that she and her kin were designed to bring peace, but were born into an endless war instead. But regardless, that was not the point. The point was that Saint was made out of stone. Sunny had always thought that it was an integral part of her design, a fundamental aspect of the vision her creator had for the living statues. To make them stronger, perhaps, or harder to destroy. But after witnessing the porcelain dolls and speaking with Mordred, Sunny was not so sure anymore. The broken dolls showed that the material from which to make his creations had not mattered to the prince of the underworld too much. What was at hand? The simplest solution. Was Saint made out of stone, simply because there was a lot of stone in the Hollow Mountains for its prince to house in his experiments? There was nothing but stone there, really. That, can bear right, can it? But somehow, Sunny felt that it was, indeed, right. He glanced at Saint and blinked a couple of times. Single quote. Lazy bastard. Sunny shivered, half expecting Toba struck down for thinking about the mighty demon in such unflattering terms. When nothing happened, He shook his head and returned to his thoughts. There was plenty of stone in the Hollow Mountains, but there was literally nothing around the Ebony Tower. But what about in the past? What had there been a lot of around it back at the time the prince of the underworld resided in the sky below? What would he have used to power his magical engines? This pagoda had been built to harvest divine flames, after all. Feeling the headache finally retreat, Sunny stood up and walked over to the arch. Then, he summoned the cruel sight, activated the dark mirror enchantment, and poured his essence into it, watching the silver blade become infused with incandescent white light. Then, he hesitated for a moment, and lightly pressed the tip of the somber spear against the cold black stone. Immediately, it was as how the floodgates had been opened in his soul. The shadow essence flowed into the cruel sight, and through it, the divine flame flowed into the arch. Sunny staggered. In just a few seconds, all of his essence was spent. However, the portal did not open. Something in the hall did change, though. The circle of runes surrounding the obsidian arch began to glow with weak, shimmering light. That light was dim and barely visible, but it was, without a doubt, there. Sunny stared at the runes for a long time, and then, a wide grin appeared on his face. Quote. Bingo. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 456 to 456, Leaving Nothing Behind. 1,173 words. For the next few days, Sunny's life became rather monotonous. He would meditate while circulating the shadow essence through the coils of the soul serpent to enhance the speed of FITS recovery, pour right into the obsidian arch, and repeat the process. With each cycle, the runes surrounding the portal became brighter and brighter. The portal was slowly coming to life, filling Sunny with hope so intense that he struggled to contain it. He had no doubt that he would be able to activate the arch, and then, he would go to the ivory tower, find a way to descend back to the chain isles, somehow, and return to the real world. And buy a new refrigerator, and stock it with all kinds of food. Sitting on the stone floor of the highest level of the Ebony Tower, Sunny looked at the covetous coffer, which stood nearby, with a resentful expression. Heck knew full well that there was no meat left there, or any other kind of food. Who knew he would miss a vile flesh of the Morton mimic one day? I guess one should never say never. Sunny was close to fully replenishing the shadow essence, so his thoughts began to wander. Out of boredom, he dove into the soul sea, stared at the shadows for some time, then paced around, then summoned some of his memories and read their descriptions for the 100th time, then stared at the looming black suns of his shadow course, then paced some more, then summoned a few other memories. Boring, sobering. After a while, something finally attracted his attention. The runes off Weaver's mask had apparently changed a little. Before, there was a, in place of the name OFIT's third enchantment. After Sunny had activated that enchantment, almost frying his brain in the process, the name changed, however. He blinked a few times, then looked at the runes again. Did I read it right? But no, there was no mistake. The first two enchantments were just as before, Mantle of Lies and Simple Trick. The third one, however, now had new runes describing it. Memory enchantment. Where is me? Where is me? Enchantment description. Helps the wielder peer into the tapestry of fate. Sunny looked at the runes with a deadpan expression for a few moments, and then laughed so hard that it threw him out of the soul sea. Oh gods, where is me? Priceless. By the time he was done laughing at Weber's strange naming sensibility, the cycle of restoring the shadow essence was complete. Sunny shook his head, smiled, then stood up and summoned the cruel sight. By now, the circle of runes was burning with a furious white radiance, turning the somber black hall into a stark tapestry of darkness and light. It seemed as if the air inside the arch was rippling slightly, hazy from heat. He walked toward the obsidian arch and, without wasting any time, touched it with the tip of the silver spear. Once again, his soul essence was devoured at terrible speed. This time, however, only half of it was consumed. As bright light suddenly hit Sunny in the eyes, he took an involuntary step back and raised AHA and to shield them. A cool breeze caressed his face, and he could suddenly smell bark, grass, soil, life. When his eyes adjusted to the brightness, Sunny slowly lowered his hand and looked at the arch with a bewildered expression. It was as how a rift in reality appeared inside the Ebony Tower. All around the portal, the hall was just as it had been, dark, somber, cut from lustreless black stone. Inside the portal, however, was a clear blue sky. Sunlight had suddenly invaded the Ebony Tower after thousands of years spent in utter darkness, and brought with it the sounds of the wind and the rustling of leaves. Sunny could see the skies, but also the ground. A beautiful green meadow continued from where the obsidian floor ended, full of vibrancy and life. A shadow of a tall tree shaded the proximity of the portal, and there was a path of white stone leading from it toward. Some distance away, a pristine white wall rose higher than Sunny could see through the portal. Surrounded by the blue skies, clouds, and vibrant green grass, it seemed to be the epitome of beauty and tranquility. The whole site was like a paradise. Hess swallowed. The ivory tower. Mordred was right. What is more, judging by how softly the grass swayed under the wind and how lazily the branches of the tree moved, the heavenly island was really not affected by the crushing. In that regard, at least, it was safe. Yes, suddenly tense, Sunny quickly glanced at the circle of runes. Just as Shahad expected, it was already growing dimmer. The portal was burning through the meager amount of divine flame Sunny had been able to charge it within these past days, and was going to close soon. Curses. Well, it was not asked how he had not been prepared to go through the arch as soon as it opened. He had done everything human did Toto in the ebony tower, given the circumstances. There was not much Tobedon here, to begin with. Time had destroyed every possible trophy he could have found, and the most valuable treasures, the bone weave and the knowledge of the map left behind by the prince of the underworld, were already in his possession. Now, he just had to escape alive. Dismissing all of his memories, Sunny wrapped both shadows around his body, and dashed toward the light. Please don't be an illusion. He appeared near the portal, dove inside, and stumbled, falling to his knees. His fingers touched the soft grass, and, with his tactile sense enhanced by the bone weave, Sunny felt every tiny detail of FIT's texture, of the rich soil beneath, of the heat of the sun on his skin. It was all real. It was wonderful. As portal shimmered and closed behind him, Sunny closed his eyes tightly and let out a short, quiet cry. He had too many emotions boiling in his heart to put them into words. He made it. He escaped from the void. He left nothing behind. While Sunny was feeling the joy of escaping from the sky below, something else happened. Somewhere far away, or maybe close by, there was a room built of cold stone, full of deafening silence. It was dark and empty, arranged in the shape of a heptagon, with 7 corners drowning in deep shadows. There were 7 mirrors standing at each of the 7 walls of the room, pointed at each center. There was nothing there. However, in each of the 7 mirrors, a figure of a young man reflected, sitting on the stone floor with his hands chained behind his back. The young man was still and motionless, almost as if he was just a statue and not a living being. But then, something changed. A few moments after Sunny crossed the portal and appeared on the aisle of the ivory tower. One corner of the young man's lips curled upward slightly, forming a hint of a smile. Mordred was glad to see Sunny escape, too. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 457 to 457, Ivory Tower. 1093 words. Saint, come look at this. Sunny sat on the soft grass, enjoying the sunlight and the cool wind. He had not even known how much I missed them. Missed everything, really. Looking back, it was hard to imagine that he had endured more than a month of utter nothingness without losing his mind. His experiences in the Dark City, it seemed, made him far more resilient. The shadow of the ivory tower was slowly moving closer as evening approached, marking the passage of time. It was peaceful and quiet on the green meadow of the heavenly island. Answering his call, the taciturn demon appeared nearby and stood silently, observing the magnificent white tower. Her ruby eyes, however, did not show any emotion. He sighed, quote, Well, I think it's lovely. The soaring island was not very large, so Sunny could more or less see its edge not too far away, surrounded by floating slates of shattered marble. There was a meadow on this side of it, a grove that rustled under the wind, and a graceful gazebo built of the same white material as ivory tower itself. The stone arch inside of it was also white and empty. The portal was gone. Some distance away, connected to the gazebo by a stone path, stood the magnificent great pagoda that had once belonged to the demon of hope. If its copy in the sky below was somber and ominous, the original was the complete opposite. It was beautiful, graceful, and slightly surreal, as if too sublime to exist in the mortal realm. Anazence, it'd not. Something about the ivory tower made Sunny uneasy, however. He couldn't quite describe the feeling, but it was asked how he simultaneously felt pulled toward it and threatened by it. The sensation did not come from his intuition, but more so from the deepest corners of his soul. It was rather strong, and there was also something strange in the shape of the tower itself. There was a weird thing that went around the base of it, circling the whole perimeter of the great pagoda and disappearing from view. That thing was almost of the same color, but slightly less pristine, and made out of fallen and weathered sections. After looking at it for a while, Sunny finally realized what the thing was. Bone, wrapped around the tower was what remained of the tail of some giant, dead creature. Hef round, single quote. Good thing it's dead. I hope it remains this way. Sunny sighed, used the cruel sight to help himself stand up, and headed toward the edge of the island. Saint followed, putting the blade of the midnight shard on her shoulder. Reaching it, he cautiously looked down and saw the disjointed patchwork of the chain aisles far below. From this height, they looked like pieces of a beautiful mosaic that someone had laid out on the backdrop of velvety darkness, with scattering of radiant stars shining in between. Sunny gazed down for a while, then picked Cupra from the ground and threw it over the edge. The rock fell for 800 meters or so without meeting any resistance. Then, however, it suddenly cracked and exploded into shards, which then became dust and were scattered in the wind. Single quote. Curses. It seemed that the crushing was still there. It's just that the ivory tower itself was not affected by it, as well as island it stood upon and a small area surrounding it. How was he going to come down? Sunny stood at the edge for some time with a restful expression on his face, then turned around and walked deeper into the island, circling the ivory tower from the left. On the other side of the great pagoda was a clear lake, with streams of water flowing out off it and falling over the edge of the island. In the bright sunlight, it seemed as how the entire surface of the lake was shining with pure golden radiance. Sunny looked at this reflection in the water, then at an intricately engraved bench standing near it, cut from white stone. Finally, he walked further on and reached a vantage point from which the gate of the graceful tower could be seen. Oh, the gates looked very similar to those he had opened in the depths of the sky below, with the main difference being the color and the absence of soot. As well as that there were skeletal remains of a giant beast lying in front of them, its serpentine body wrapped around the tower, its massive skull resting right near the tall white doors. Each of the terrifying fangs of the great beast was as long as Sunny was tall, at least. Deep darkness nestled in its empty eyes. Heshevert, ice that, a dragon. Indeed, it was. Right in front of Sunny were the weathered, snow-white bones of an actual dragon. The image of the mighty creature laying dead in front of the pristine tower was solemn, mysterious, and terrifying. What could have killed such a being? Thinking that he didn't push off now, Sunny lingered for a while, then headed toward the remains of the dragon. He was desperately hoping that the great beast would not stir and come to life. If that happened, well, it was better to not even think about it. Reaching the white skull of the mighty creature, Sunny hesitated for a bit, then walked between the terrifying fangs and approached the gates. They were slightly ajar, so he didn't even need to assess and unlock them. Sunny gathered his courage, raised his hand, and pushed the gates open. Suddenly, he felt a bit sleepy. What ice this? Shaking his head to chase the sleepiness away, Sunny walked inside the tower and found himself in a great hall, bright light streaming through its tall windows. The air inside, however, was infused with strange, shimmering darkness. And in its center, there were chains. 7 chains sprawled from the pristine white floor, as if growing out of it, each ending in a broken shackle. The shackles were inscribed with a myriad of runes and marred, their metal torn. They were also the source of the strange shimmering, which rose from their surface in ethereal wisps. A chaotic, ever-changing mass of pure darkness pulsated in the very center of the great hall. No, it was not darkness, rather, it seemed like a rift in the fabric of reality, one that could devour even light itself. Sunny tensed, then took a tentative step forward, hoping to see what was hidden behind the darkness. As soon as she did so, however, a familiar voice echoed in the silence of the great hall. Stop, sunless, turn back if you wish to live, share to your friends, tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave, Chapter 458 to 458, Shackles of Hope. 1169 words. Sunny froze, then took a careful step back and stared at the walls of the great hall. Mordred's timing, this time around, was impeccable. It was not like Sunny had planned to get too close to the massive darkness, but he might have underestimated the danger it presented. Tobohonest, he felt that he wasn't thinking entirely straight. It was not like he had lost control, but the strange pull he felt outside the tower was much stronger here, exerting a subtle effect on his mind. Sunny tensed and glanced at the pulsating dark rift, then realized that the pull emanated from the shackles that were the source of it. Quote. Why, what is that thing? The lost prince remained silent for a few moments, then sighed. I really can make sense of you. Sunny blinked. That was not the answer he had expected. What is that supposed to mean? Mordred answered with a bit of doubt in his voice. Nothing, really, it's just that. Some things about you suggest a certain background, but then there are as many contradictions. Didn't you know what a seed of nightmare looks like? Sunny jumped back, then cautiously looked at the mass of shimmering darkness again. So, that was a seed of nightmare. Apple manifestation of the spell that grew in the dream realm and eventually blossomed, opening Agate to the real world for the nightmare creature stoned her. The thing that awakened were supposed to seek out and destroy by challenging the nightmare contained within. No wonder it exerted a pull on him. He scowled, then said with annoyance. How am I supposed to talk now what a seed of nightmare looks like? I only became awakened a few months ago. Mordred spoke in his usual polite tone. Have your clan elders not taught you anything? Sunny opened his eyes wide, a shocked expression appearing on his face. Clan? What clan? Do I look like a legacy to you? The lost prince did not answer, letting Sunny boil with outrage insolence. Eventually, he slowly exhaled and asked dejectedly. Anyway, are you sure that that's what it is? Mordred lingered for a long time, then said quietly. I am. I searched for it for a long time, after all. Hearing these words, Sunny frowned. Single quote. What? Wait, is that why you were trying to reach the ivory tower? To challenge a nightmare? He rubbed his face in frustration, trying to find a way to make sense of that statement, then shook his head. Why the hell would you do that? There's no shortage of seeds of nightmare everywhere in the dream realm, ones that are not hidden behind endless voids and oceans of divine flame. These things were not so numerous that one stumbled on every day, but also not so rare to go to these lengths to reach one. What had Mordred been thinking? The lost prince answered after a short pause, his voice slightly amused. Quote. You are not a legacy, indeed. Sunny let out a heavy sigh. Either you are extra obscure today, or can't understand you for some reason. What do legacies have to do with any of this? Mordred thought for a bit, then said, this seed of nightmare, is Avery, very special one. What is she going on about? The only thing that differentiated seeds, in Sunny's mint, was their category. A category 2 seed would blossom into a category 2 gate, and contain a second nightmare. If unawakened challenged ITA and D past the trial, they would become a master. If a master challenged a category 3 seed and survived the third nightmare, they would become a saint. The same thing went for sovereigns, although there only had been 3/4 nightmares conquered in all of human history, as far as Sunny knew, and Heck knew more than most people. How could a seed be special? As if guessing what he was thinking about, Mordred spoke. There are a lot of masters, but not all masters are equal. There are a few dozen saints, but not all saints are equal. And similarly, there are numerous nightmares, but not all nightmares are equal. Sunny scowled. How so? Is it easier? More difficult? The lost prince sighed. Neither. As far as difficulty of the trial is concerned, the spell is always fair, in its own perverse way. However, that doesn't mean that the outcome is always the same. What enemies you vanquish determine what memories and echoes you receive. What battles you fight determines what experience you will bring back. Sunny thought back on his own arsenal of memories, and had to admit that the more unique nightmare creatures he had fought, the greater the reward was. In that sense, challenging a unique nightmare would certainly pose more risk, but also promise a greater boon. Add the existence of the lineage memories into the equation. A deep frown appeared on his face. Mordred, however, was not done talking. Quote. But more than that, the nature of the nightmare you challenge determines what knowledge you will receive, and what secret you will be able to glean. As a researcher, you should know that the lessons humans can learn from the decrepit ruins in the dream realm are not that profound. Where do you think most O4 knowledge comes from? It comes from the stories people bring back from their nightmares, of course. That made sense. There were actual natives of the dream realm out and about in the nightmares, after all. Like Oro of the Nine, even Ipe was really just an illusion created by the spell was no simple thing. Most of the knowledge Sunny possessed was built on the foundation of what he had learned from the noble swordsman and scholar. How much more would he know if he had gone into the nightmare with the intention to not only survive but also learn? Sunny glanced at the dark seed. It had grown in the tower that had once belonged to the 7 demons. What mysteries would such a nightmare reveal? Mordred gave him time to think, then said in an even tone. For that reason, legacy clans, not all of them, but the truly powerful ones, select the nightmares for their members to challenge very carefully. Sunny lingered for a bit, then raised an eyebrow. Quote. What crazy clan chose that cursed seed for you to and find, then? The lost prince laughed. Oh, no one had wished for Meadowseek. It was my decision alone. In fact, I suspect that only 2 people in both the waking world and this one know about its existence. Me, and now you. He chuckled again, and then added. But that is what makes it so special, as well. None of them could have learned OFIT's existence, reached it, and taken its rewards as their own. After that, Mordred suddenly grew silent, remained that way for a while, and then added quietly. Well, it's not like I managed to do it, either. He sighed, lingered for a few moments, and then added in a wistful tone. Can you imagine what secrets that seed hides? What one would learn from that nightmare? A nightmare that was created from the chains with which Hope herself had been bound. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 459 to 459. Seed of Nightmare. 1007 words. Hope, herself. Sunny stared at the 7 chains, finding new meaning in your cruel visage in the misshapen, torn remnants of the 7 rune-inscribed shackles. Sun goddess had not been quelled by just destroying her kingdom. He had gone a step further, binding the demon of hope at the heart of her decimated domain. For how long? And how had she escaped? In the end, he tilted his head. Sub-demon of hope was chained here. Mordred answered with a hint of surprise in his voice. Quote. You know of the demons? A crooked smile appeared on Sunny's face. Edo, Abbott, why wouldn't he? Although truth be told, there's not a lot of information about them, even among the dream realm researchers. So, the ruler that you had told me about was one of the demons. A lesser deity. Mordred kept silent for a habit, then said dejectedly. Yes, I am not sure that those 2 words really go together, though. I also didn't know what Hope had done to on the wrath of the Lord of Light. However, I didn't know that these 7 chains are what is shielding icy chain isles from falling into the sky below. Sunny raised his eyebrows. What? The lost prince sighed. People think that there are numerous heavenly chains connecting all the island, but in fact, there are only 7, and you are looking at their roots. Or rather, there were only 7. Each of them had Toba broken for the ivory tower to become untethered, of course. So, now the islands are linked by the fragments of the original 7 chains, many of them severed from each other. That is why they are slowly crumbling, one after another. Sunny thought for a habit, trying to correct the way he used to think about the chain isles. The new information was interesting, but not very useful. Shaking his head, he turned back to the seed of nightmare. So, what is the category of that thing? I guess it contains a second nightmare, since you wanted to challenge it. Mordred answered succinctly. Correct. Single quote. That's one way I can get out of the dream realm, then, but am I suicidal enough to go into the second nightmare alone? Whole cohorts of experienced awakened routinely perish in their attempts to become masters. What would my chances of survival be with no one to cover my back? Just as Master Jet had said, no one survived in the dream realm alone. She probably knew from experience. Heskal, wait, will this seed create agate in the real world if it's not destroyed? When Mordred answered, his voice was almost indifferent. Indeed, but not for a long time, maybe in a few years or a decade. It has not matured enough to bloom yet. Sunny hesitated, but IT can bet challenge, right? The lost prince did not answer for a while, but then finally said, yes, a seed can bet challenge before it blooms, as well as after. If the seed is not found in time and agate opens, challengers can fight their way through and enter the nightmare directly. The gate also disrupts the anchors of those near it, so masters and saints that enter the dream realm will appear in the vicinity of the blooming seed. After that, they can lead awakened toy, Hephaus, then added. In fact, most of the seeds are not found in time, because the dream realm ice vast and only partially explored. That's the nightmare creatures are entering our world soon. Challenging a seed before it blooms ice much better. In this case, however, I would advise against it. Sunny turned away from the mass of shimmering darkness, then asked in an even tone. Yeah, why? Mordred let out a heavy sigh. Conquering a second nightmare alone is not impossible, but attempting night stand to gambling your life away. The chances of returning alive are very slim. That is why Awaken challenge them as members of cohesive, experienced cohorts. Even then, many didn't survive, most even. But this nightmare is actually far worse. Entering a cigar need death sentence, regardless of how many challengers there are. Unless, Sunny kept his ears open, suddenly very attentive. Unless what? The Lost Prince remained silent for a short moment, then said. There is a black altar in the place you call Night Temple. On it lays an ivory knife. Only those who have shed blood on the altar and receive the memory of the knife have a chance to survive the trial that hides within the seed. Sunny blinked a couple of times. Wait, that sounds very familiar. Had thought for a few seconds, then asked. Would the obsidian knife from the white altar of the sanctuary of Noctis work? Mordred laughed. Sure, having both would be even better, incredibly so. However, I didn't know the method to receive the memory of the obsidian knife. The ritual seems so different from the one required for the altar in the Night Temple, and I have never figured it out. You didn't, but I might have. The image of the covetous coffer appeared in Sunny's mint, full of golden coins. There were almost 1,500 of them inside. Would that be no toll of him to lift the obsidian knife off the altar? He had a feeling that it would. What do these knives actually do, though? And how the hell do you know all this? However, there was no response. Mordred was once again gone. Sunny was left alone in the beautiful hall of the ivory pagoda, staring at its white walls and the darkness that had taken root between them. The seed of nightmare was calling to him, demanding to be challenged and destroyed. Or maybe simply Tobit Fatalicious human soul. Crazy. This is crazy. Challenging a second nightmare alone was very similar to throwing his life away, and that was even without the particular piece of information that Mordred had given him, that no one would be able to survive this very special nightmare without a memory phone of the two altar knives, or better yet, in possession of both. The question was, what was worse? Challenging the nightmare, or attempting to survive the crushing? Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 460 to 460, Fight or Flight. 1,741 words. Sunny remained in the Hall of Chains for a while, looking at the seed of nightmare and the shimmering darkness that suffused it. Then, he walked outside, full of thought. Sunny passed between the jaws of the dead dragon and slowly headed toward the lake. There, he sat on the stone bench and stared at the water with a dark expression on his face. The wind lightly caressed his face and his pale skin, soothing the few remaining burns that he had received in the sky below. Saint stood silently by his side, her graceful onyx figure reflecting in the clear waters of the lake. A heavy sigh escaped from his lips. Single quote. I am almost home. More than a month ago, he had ventured on an expedition to explore the shipwreck island and search for clues about the whereabouts of the treasure left behind by mysterious Noctis. He had only planned Tobogone for a week. He had found the treasure, but also fought and defeated two devils, one fallen and one ascended, receiving two powerful memories in the process. After that, He gazed at the tapestry of fate through the eyes of Fatavine mask and plunged into an endless abyss. He spent several weeks plummeting through a sea of nothingness, only to open by an ocean all flames in its depths. One the other side of the fire was a black tower built by an ancient demon, and in it was a severed hand of fated consumed by a terrible rot. There, Sunny swallowed Aphelang's bone of weaver and received the second part of the lineage. After that, Hughes divine flames tubed in a portal between the dark void and the sunlit heavens, and found the seven chains that Agat had once used to open desire, the demon of hope. And somewhere along the way, he met a lost soul who called himself Mordred, the Prince of Nothing, a disembodied voice that came out of nowhere and helped him along the way. Now, Sunny just had to do one last thing, either plunge into a deadly nightmare, or off the edge of the ivory island, Tobit with the obliterating fury of the crushing. With a heavy sigh, he turned around and stared at the white bones of the great beast that had wrapped its mighty body around the base of Hope's beautiful tower once, thousands of years ago, before succumbing to death. Quote. Let's say this show on the road, I guess. Sometime later, Sunny was leaning on the wall of the ivory tower. He was in a tight spot between the tail of the dead dragon and the white surface of the great pagoda, with Saint standing near him, her weapons dismissed. With a crooked smile, Sunny wrapped the two shadows around his body and circulated shadow essence through the coils of the soul serpent, preparing for what was about to come. Then, he looked at the taciturn stone demon and raised his eyebrows. What are you waiting for? Push. Saint gave him an indifferent look, then took a step forward, placed her hand on the surface of the massive bone in front of her, and pushed with all her demonic strength. Her feet sunk into the soil by a few centimeters, but the ancient bone did not move. Until Sunny joined his shadow, that was. Pressing his shoulder against the adamantine white surface, peppered shadow essence into his muscles, and pushed, too. Although it felt asked how the strain was going to kill him, the bone finally gave. One of the massive vertebrae comprising the dead dragon's tail rolled over, separating from the rest. Come on, keep bodied. Of course, Sunny was not going to challenge a second nightmare alone. What was he, crazy? Well, maybe he was a little, but being suicidal was not a part of his very mild, borderline charming craziness. Instead, he was going to throw a piece of the dead dragon's tail off the edge of the ivory island and ride eagle away down to the ground, hoping that it would survive the onslaught of the crushing. If a dragon couldn't, then what could? Put your back into it. Saint didn't really need his encouragement or advice, so Sunny was mostly shouting for his own benefit, since producing loud noises seemed to help him cope with the strain off top which the ancient bone, for some reason. Luckily, now that it had been dislodged, the process became easier. Together, they slowly moved the massive vertebrae past the gazebo containing the inactive portal, then past the grove of fancy trees, and finally to the very edge of the island. There, Sunny stopped for a moment and tried to catch his breath. Then, he cautiously looked down. That was a mistake. If before the colorful mosaic of the flying islands far below was simply a breathtaking sight, now that he had to actually jump down, it made Sunny dizzy and frightened out of his wits. But it was too late to change his mind. Wasn't it? Gritting his teeth, Sunny tried not to think about the inconceivable height and climbed inside the vertebra, which, of course, was hollow at the center. There was just enough space there to fit his body, and that was the reason why he had chosen this particular one in the first place. He lingered for a long time, trying to gather his courage. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe I should just enter the seed. What is the big deal, anyway? It's just a second nightmare. But no, there was no way back. He simply had to do it. Inhaling deeply, Sunny held his breath for a moment, and then screamed in an asthma voice. Saint, push it over. Outside the massive vertebra, the taciturn demon stared at the surface of the ancient bone for a moment. And then, gave it a devastating kick, as tailbone of the dragon plunged off the edge of the ivory island, giving Sunny a serious rattle, hailed, dismissed Saint, and dissolved into the shadow that dwelt in the hollow space inside the vertebra. Of course, Hugh isn't going to tree and survive the crushing in his physical form, he just needed a large enough shadow to hide in. As long as dragon bone endured, the shadow would too, and he would be safe. If it entered, for a couple of seconds, everything seemed fine, but then the vertebra left the bubble of safety surrounding the heavenly island, and suddenly, an inconceivable pressure struck it from all sides like a hammer over wrathful god, making the porcelain bone produce terrifying cracking noises. Once again, Sunny was plummeting with terrible speed through the sky. Only this time, the vehicle he had chosen to transport him was even stranger, as well as spinning like crazy, with the wind roaring deafeningly all around. Luckily, he couldn't sit a shadow, otherwise, his already empty stomach would have become emptier. Curses, didn't breathe, you damn bone. The vertebra of the dead dragon was cracking and slowly breaking apart, but, miraculously, still holding together. At this height, the crushing was deadly enough to pulverize the flesh of a saint, a bona fide demigod, into a bloody paste. Maybe even a big, red cloud, but the adamantine dragon bone was only now beginning to slowly crumble apart. Once the process started, though, it became unstoppable. Sunny panicked as he watched white cracks appear on the white surface all around him. Then, a piece of the bone flew away, letting an chaotic flood of light. Cursing, he shifted away from the breach, but seconds later, another appeared, and then another. The size of the shadow he could hide in was growing smaller and smaller. Crap, soon, there were more holes and cracks in the bone than he could count. And then, it crumbled completely. At the last second, Sunny slid onto the biggest remaining slab of the ancient vertebra, and then went into a crazy dance, shifting from one side to another as fragments spun and exposed different parts of it to the sunlight. Small pieces broke off from it, and then, the fragment itself cracked, too. Arg, finally, the piece of the adamantine vertebrae disintegrated into a rain of splinters that were too small to fit Sunny into their shadows. With nowhere else to hide, he was thrown out into the physical world, his body instantly becoming the victim of the bone-breaking force of the crushing. Luckily, his bones were now much more robust than before, and the crushing was already not as irrevocably obliterating as it had been higher up. A loud scream escaped from Sunny's mouth. He continued to fall, feeling his body go through a cruel meat grinder. But with the help of two shadows and Agnar's outpour of shadow essence, it wasn't intended to kill him or even seriously wound him. It was simply painful, damaging, and unpleasant. The tailbone of the dead dragon had carried him down for long enough to go through the worst layers of the crushing. Now, all he had to do was stick a landing. With ASUP pressed prone, Sunny struggled to control his fall and finally managed to stabilize his body, preventing it from spinning madly. The chain dials were now much closer than they had been before. In fact, he could even recognize a few nearest ones. Didn't you dare miss, you pale bastard. Really didn't want to repeat the whole damn process again. Summoning the dark wing, Sunny waited for a second for the dragonfly cloak to activate its enchantment, and then slowly started to turn his fall into glide. A single thought rang in his mind. I made it. I actually made it. Crap, I really did. Sometime later, a figure of a young man fell from the skies and nimbly landed on the index finger of the giant iron hand that lay in the center of a peaceful, quiet island. The young man looked a bit strange. He was naked above the waist, with several half-healed burns covering his pale skin, an amenacing, intricate tattoo of a coiling black serpent covering his arms, as well as a large part of his torso. His black hair was wild and disheveled, and his dark eyes seemed a little crazy. Sunny swayed a little, caught his balance, and turned to a group of awakened who were sitting around a dancing campfire, staring at them with their mouths wide open. A bright smile appeared on his face. Ah, good day to you, fellow humans. Say, as mid-intensity appeared in his eyes, Sunny licked his lips and asked hoarsely. Ice that food I see roasting over your fire. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 461 to 461. Welcome home. 982 words. The heavy lid of the metal sarcophagus opened, letting out bluish light and wisps of cold mist. Soon, a pale hand emerged from inside. Jumping out of the sleeping pod, Sunny landed on the floor, felt the ceramic texture of the armored plates beneath his bare feet, and let out a LOW, satisfied sigh. I back, finally. It was nice to return to the real world. After meeting the cohort of the sanctuary awakened on the Iron Hand Island, he traveled back to the Citadel with them. Some were curious about where he had been for more than a month, but most weren't even aware that Sunny had gone missing. He used the full scope of his formidable ability to bend the truth every which way, and left them with the impression that his recent expedition had been long, but not very exciting. They did continue to give him strange looks the whole way back, though. For some reason, but Sunny wasn't too bothered by that. After entering the sanctuary, he went straight for the altar. Since it was the middle of the day and the moon was hidden behind the horizon, he couldn't use the coins immediately. So, instead, he simply touched the altar and left the dream realm. Home, I'm finally home. Even though Sunny had not spent a lot of time in his new house, the feeling of safety both its walls and the real world gave him was extremely comforting. Miraculously, even though he had been gone for many weeks, his body felt completely fine. It was asked how he had only slept for a night. That's the magic of technology. Glancing at the extravagantly expensive sleeping pod, Sunny decided that he had spent his money well, and headed for the exit out of the basement while whistling a cheerful tune. Then, however, froze. What the hell? Something was not right. First of all, he had never used the lighting in the underground dojo, but now, it was turned on, drowning everything with bright light. Secondly, the armored doors of the lift leading up were violently torn open. It was asked how a massive nightmare creature had broken through the defense systems of the house and ripped them apart, bending the adamantine alloy like it was wax. Crap, Sunny jumped back and summoned the cruel sight. What could have come here? Did Agate open nearby? Full of attention and grim determination, he used the stairwell to climb to the ground floor and cautiously entered his living room. The first thing he saw there were dirty dishes, lots and lots of dirty dishes. The second thing he saw were two hazel eyes staring at them with scathing accusation. Have a gone really crazy. Somehow, Effie was in his living room, sitting in her wheelchair with a bowl of steaming cup noodles in one hand and chopsticks in the other. There was a very disgruntled expression on her face. What the hell is she doing here? What is going on? Staring at Sunny, Effie swallowed a mouthful of noodles and then said in a dark tone. You're back. Wait to make your friends worry, asshole. A sit and out. Back when Sunny had been falling into the sky below and thinking about how no one would miss him, he was very wrong. In fact, the opposite had happened. About 2 weeks after Hess stopped answering their messages, both Effie and Kai got worried. Effie went to the academy to check on him, and that was when they learned that Sunny moved out of the dormitory. Bastard, you could have told us that you bought yourself a house, you know. You owe me a housewarming party. Sunny blinked. A what party? I see really such a thing, or is she pulling my leg? Not knowing where to find him, Kai used his connections to learn Sunny's new address. Since he was limited in where he could geo without drawing the attention of the press, Effie went instead. And when she found the basement locked, well, my armored doors. It was you broke them. She sneered. What are you crying about? Those armored doors of yours were pathetically easy to break, anyway. Buy yourself better ones. Anyway, it thought that I was going to find your corpse in the sleeping pod. Do you even know how that made me feel? A heavy expression appeared on her face. That would have been a real tragedy. Sunny sighed. Well, at least she cares. Quote. I mean, just think about it. All those amazing memories you hoard, gone just like that. If you're going Toady, at least give them tone before you do. Single quote. Spoke too soon. After making sure that his life signs were stable inside the sleeping pod, Effie stayed to keep a watch on him, while both she and Kai tried to find out where Sunny was. Apparently, they went as far as contacting the representatives of the White Feather clan. You didn't. Sunny grabbed his head, realizing that he had a lot of explaining to do once he was back in the sanctuary. A cohort of random awakened was one thing, but if St. Tears herself was aware of his disappearance, things were going to get much harder for him. Effie snorted. Of course we did. We also contacted Cassie and her firekeepers, since they have a cohort in that remote hellhole you were anchored at. But even she didn't know where the hell you have disappeared to. Curses. They even brought Cassie and did. Sunny groaned. But why would you do all this? Effie gave him a long look, then shook her head dejectedly. Doofus, can you stop being such a doofus? Hess stared at her in bewilderment. What is that supposed to mean? She shook her head again and activated her communicator. Ponder on it, and while you're at it, be quiet for a few minutes. I need to call Kai and tell him that you have turned up. Poor guy must have flown halfway to the chain aisles by now. Sunny eyes grew wide. Flown, what? Effie gave him a pitying look. Then, she said, quote. What part of be quiet did you not understand? Share to your friends. Enjoying the site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 462 to 462, an epic quest. 1,153 words. After Effie gave Kai a call and let him know that Sunny was alive and back in the real world, they spent a minute in awkward silence. Sunny looked around, taking in the sight of his once pristine and orderly living room. Now, there were dirty dishes everywhere, as well as empty packets of takeout food. At least he thought that was what they were, since he had never actually bought one before. Effie was such a slob. There were even several pieces of clothing thrown into a corner. Speaking of clothing, crap, by the way, Sunny, when did you get this badass tattoo? A big, long snake nollis. Makes a girl wonder. He sighed heavily, cursing the fact that he had not adjusted the puppeteer shroud after summoning it back in the basement. There were no burns on his skin now, after all. Quote dot dot dot. It's not really a tattoo. It's a magical serpent that helps me control and regenerate essence faster. Didn't ask why it manifests as a tattoo, because I have no idea, really. He hesitated for Abbott, then asked, so you've been just living here for these past few weeks? Effie shrugged, sure, someone had to monitor your vital signs. Plus, my family, well, they deserved a break after taking care of my comatose body for 4 years and everything before that. So I bought a very nice place for us, and then, sort of, moved out. Then, an animated expression appeared on her face. Didn't worry, though, the stuff you keep in your bedroom remained a secret. I can even go up the stairs, remember? Sunny stared at her in outrage. What stuff? There's no stuff. I didn't even use the bedroom. I can really sleep, can I? Effie laughed. Quote dot dot dot. Right, makes sense. That you are not doing it on the bed kind of guy. Oh, yeah, what happened to your fridge? Hegler, then looked away in embarrassment. Ah, that, I sort of broke it. By accident. Then, a sudden smile appeared on his face. Quote dot dot dot. Wanna go buy a new one? Since Kai wanted to meet, Sunny and Effie decided to visit Analyte Shopping Center in the center of the city, and then wait for him in a posh restaurant nearby. The former huntress also told Sunny that she would hold off on asking questions about his unexpected adventure until all three of them were together, so that he didn't have to repeat everything twice. Which suited him fine, since he needed time to decide what he wanted to tell his friends, and what would better give to himself. There was so much he needed to think about, and do. The journey into the sky below had not only disrupted his plans in the real world, but also added new things to his agenda. From training Taoyld a spear better to setting up a shop to sell the soul shards he had brought back with the help of the covetous coffer, there were just too many opportunities in front of him. He also had to decide what Toto about rain, and continue practicing shadow dance in the dreamscape. Everyone had forgotten about Mongrel by now, surely. No doubt about it. Adult life is hard. They reached the shopping center with the help of a passenger PTV, which seemed a bit too luxurious to Sunny, but was a necessity considering that it would have been hard for Effie to move around in public transport. Not only because of her disability, but also because she was somewhat of a celebrity. He had noticed at least 3 propaganda posters depicting her, the way she looked in the dream realm, to be exact, on buildings as PTV drove toward the heart of the city. Even he had to agree that Effie looked impressive, like a beautiful goddess of war that knew no fear or would never surrender to anything, not even the hopeless darkness of the forgotten shore. Triumph and perseverance, that was what people needed to see, considering how hard and dire life in the real world could seem sometimes. Even IFITWAS just a sweet, benevolent lie. It gave them hope, at least. A hope gave them strength. Dot dot dot. Noticing his gaze, Effie grinned. Looking good, Amy. He had no choice but to tell the truth. Quote dot dot dot. Yeah, she giggled. Do you remember how Scar and Park came up with that story to make me seem like some kind of a folk hero in the outer settlement, back when Gunlotus people were searching for me? Well, the government ran wild with it, as you can see. Plus the fact that I was in charge of the first line during the siege, they made Mindo a poster girl for the young generation of the awakened. Right after Neffy's, of course. Her face suddenly grew dark and solemn. After a long pause, Effie added. Quote dot dot dot. It's a shame that neither of them lived long enough to see their stupid story become a worldwide hit. Park would have been so full of himself now, I fetted. I can just about hear him boast. And that was the bitter truth that people didn't get to see. The terrible price of the triumph they celebrated was known only to those who had gone through it, and somehow emerged alive on the other side. The two of them spent some relaxing time in the shopping center, Effie resting in her wheelchair, Sunny pushing it from behind. From time to time, someone recognized her as famous raised by wolves, and politely expressed their respect and admiration. He, on the other hand, seemed almost invisible. Sunny didn't mean it was better that way, really. Being invisible suited a shadow very well. More importantly, the act of buying a stupid refrigerator filled him with pure delight. He had been fantasizing about it for so long in the sky below, after all. In essence, this whole thing had just been a giant obstacle on his epic quest to buy a fridge. And now, after overcoming countless dangers and hardships, that deadly quest was over. Sunny worked out the details about the delivery, and soon, it was time to meet up with Kai. He had never been to a posh restaurant before, but it seemed as how his outer appearance was decent enough to not look out of place. The mundane clothes he wore had been chosen with the help of the charming fashion icon himself, after all. Or maybe it was Effie's presence that made everyone there extra polite and a little bit reverent. They entered a tastefully decorated space and saw a tall individual in a black cap and an ordinary face mask standing nearby. The weirdo was wearing sunglasses inside. Before Sunny could understand what was happening, the masked individual quickly approached and gave him a big hug. Does her really think that his disguise is fooling anyone? And why is she always trying to hug me? Of course, it was Kai. No amount of masks and sunglasses could hide the glamorous aura of the enchanting nightingale. It only made him stand out even more. Sunny sighed. That dashing bastard. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 463 to 463. The incredible adventures and astonishing deeds of heroic dreamer Sunless and his stoic stone companion Stalking Rock and Silent Saint. Abridged Volume 2. 1,285 words. The three of them sat down and were presented with old-fashioned paper menus to make their choice from. Sunny stared at the word steak for Abbott, then shuddered and shifted his gaze to the salad section. A few minutes later, a waiter approached to take their order. Effie spoke. I guess 3 portions of bibimbap, 3 portions of samgyeopsal, 3 bowls of jjajangmyeon, and 3 portions of tteokbokki. Then, she turned to them, smiled innocently, and asked, quote dot dot dot. Oh, and what about you, guys? What are you going to order? Sunny almost choked on the water he was drinking from a beautiful crystal glass. The waiter, though, somehow managed to keep a straight face. What a professional. Dot dot dot. Since they were seated in a private booth, Kai finally took off his cap and sunglasses, then smiled brilliantly. His voice sounded so sincere that I jerked Sunny. A little. It's nice to see you, Sunny. Effie and you were really worried. Sunny cleared his throat. That's, thanks. I guess. I sort of assumed that you wouldn't notice that I was gone. Effie sighed. I am starting to wish that it didn't. You idiot. Anyway, what the hell happened? Why were you gone for an entire month? He hesitated, then said, do you want to hear the long version, or the short version? Kai gave him a curious look. Let's start with the short version, I think. Sunny scratched the back of his head. Alright, well, in that case, I basically just wanted to find clues about a hidden treasure, but ended up almost being eaten by a treasure chest, falling into a bottomless abyss on top of a devil's corpse and being burned by divine flames. Luckily, there is this voice I can hear in my head sometimes, and I felt Mato only get burned a little. Effie tilted her head and gave him a strange look. Kai smiled paled a little. Sunny took a sip of water and continued in a carefree tone. Anyway, deep in the void, I found a black tower. There were some broken dolls and a rotting severed arm inside, which I, ate, sort of. From the black tower in the abyss, I went to a white tower in the skies, and then rode back to the ground on a dragon's tail. That's basically it. Oh, and before all that, I can have killed myself, I guess. Got a very nice memory out of it, too. The two of them stared at them for a few moments, and then sighed almost simultaneously. Kai shook his head. I take it back. Let's hear the long version. Sunny explained the sequence of events that led to him being gone for more than a month, keeping a few things to himself, like the true number of the miraculous coins he had collected, everything having to do with Weaver, and the real reason for why he was so desperate to grow stronger as fast as possible. When he was done, Effie giggled. Well, that faded attribute of yours has really been in overdrive lately, hasn't it? A sore expression appeared on Sunny's face. I guess. I had solid 3 months of nothing too bad or too good happening before that, though. But that's the thing, when it does finally happen, one thing usually leads to another. It's not all terrible, though. I had to work really hard to survive, but other than that, this expedition was a windfall for me. Kai took a sip off the and then said thoughtfully, and what about this voice, Mordred? Do you trust him? Sunny hesitated, then shrugged. After I made sure that he's not just a figment of my imagination, I came to believe that Mordred is indeed one of the lost, and most likely an awakened just like where. Most likely, Kai can communicate with me over a large distance because of the mirror shard I picked up after putting down that strange artificial echo of his. Other than that, though, I don't know. He's very mysterious, to say the least. Had thought for Abbott, and then added. Every piece of information he had given me turned out to be true, so far, and very helpful. I might have not been alive right now if not for him. Swedish art Tose, really? Kai smiled. Well, in that case, Heisel right in my book. Sunny paused as waiter approached to bring the dirty dishes away and refill their glasses. After they were alone once again, remained silent for Abbott, then turned to Effie. But anyway, Edo believed that what he said about the seed ice true. I think I can get the obsidian knife, which is supposed to make the nightmare easier. So, I wanted to ask, Effie, I know that you can snap your fingers and have a dozen of the most powerful awakened cohorts in the world accompany you to conquer the second nightmare. But, would you consider challenging one with me? He expected her to tease him a little before giving an answer, but Effie remained quiet for Abbott and an uncharacteristically serious expression on her face. After a while, she said, challenge a nightmare. Now, barely 4 months after we had become awakened. Are you crazy, Sunny? Hesmald. No, I didn't mean now. Both Ofus need time to grow stronger and prepare, of course. After saying that, Sunny looked away. Quote. In 7 months, after the winter solstice, that's when I plan to return to the ivory tower and go into that seed. Will you come with me? Effie looked at them for a long time, then smiled, too. Sure, why not? I wouldn't have you any other way, even. But, Sunny, I have one condition. Her raised an eyebrow. Really, what is it? Effie glanced at Kai, then said calmly. You need to convince Cassie to join us, too. I didn't know what happened between the two of you, but it doesn't matter. Members of our cohort didn't need to be friends. They just need to work well together, and our cohort worked perfectly, back on the Forgotten Shore. Castor is dead, and Nephis is gone, but Cassie is still here, and we both know how invaluable her aspect is. Asunia's face darkened, she added. Plus, isn't she anchored at the Night Temple? She can help you get the ivory knife, as well. That Prince Owen said that having both would be much better. A nightmare is a nightmare and will be absolutely deadly, no matter how prepared you are. Letting go of the advantage is stupid. Convinced Cassie. A wave of anger and protest rose from the depths of Sunny's heart. Even though he had time to recover from what had happened in the Crimson Spire and understood the reason why Cassie had done what she had, he was still full of resentment. He was still hurt. He was still unwilling to even think about forgiving her. But Effie was right. No matter how healthful about Cassie, she was a boon for any cohort, especially now, since she had grown much more confident in her powers after becoming an awakened. She also had other survivors of the Forgotten Shore following her as he waited for Nephis to return, and the connection to the clan Valor emissaries in the Night Temple. He didn't have to forgive her to fight side by side with her. He just had to trust that she wouldn't betray him again, which Hera luckily did. Even though Sunny didn't want to give Cassie the benefit of the doubt, Heck knew that she had learned a bitter lesson. A heavy sigh escaped from his lips. Single quote. What should he do? It was at that moment that Kai, who had remained silent during their conversation, suddenly spoke. I feud in Mind, count mine, too. I want to challenge the second nightmare with the three of you, guys, as well. In fact, even if you dominate, I insist. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 464 to 464. Passion blossoms hotter in the cold heart of despair. 1016 words. Both Sunny and Effie stared at them in surprise. After a while, the former huntress asked, challenge the nightmare with us. Didn't you have a great position in Bastion, safe behind its walls? Has Sunny infected you with his madness? Kai frowned, then looked away. After a while, he said, yes, Edo, but, do you guys remember Aiko? She had a gambling den in the Bright Castle. Well, anyway, Aiko has aerial talent for managing various things, sub-agency hired her as me manager. One evening, we ended up talking about the Dark City. A sad smile appeared on his face. Both of you only lived in the outer settlement, which had its own share of challenges, of course. Much more dire than what we will pay tribute faced in the castle. But life wasn't that bright there, either. Remained silent for Abbott, then continued. Aiko had it way worse than I, though, especially after one of the Pathfinders made a point of making her life a living hell, Enel, whose head Lady Nephis eventually took off his shoulders. We all knew it, but no one really helped. A heavy sigh escaped from Kai's lips, because what could anyone know who's really do against one of the Pathfinders? But there was a lot of these compromises, of little lies we told ourselves as we closed our eyes to every dark, dirty thing that went on around us. Hal looked at Effie, and said, people were starving in the outer settlement while we had our bellies full. Well, it wasn't our fault, because the castle couldn't feed everyone. Surely, if there was more food, we would have shared. The guards decided to hire someone. Well, that wasn't our fault either, because Tessai was too powerful, and we were too weak to resist him. And soon, endlessly, everyone went as far as he needed to keep thinking of himself as one of the good guys. Kai grew silent, then said quietly, but, you see, it actually was our fault. All Opushe committed the same crime, we were all weak. When I spoke to Aiko, I finally realized that in this world, being weak is too. At least for us, the awakened. So, yes, I want to challenge the second nightmare, despite being safe and sound behind the walls of the Bastion. Because I never want to close my eyes to anything, ever again. Hal looked at them, then smiled. 7 months, that's more than enough time for Meadow prepare. Plus, didn't you need someone who can fly? Or are you going to simply jump into that weird underski again and just hope to miss all those flames? Sunny coughed. Kai had a point. Well, if you put it like that. After Kai's unexpected and poignant confession, they spent some time simply relaxing, laughing, enjoying their food, and chatting about this and that. Kai shared his experience of winning 12 consecutive weeks of the Avatar Singer and having Talus on purpose in the end, and the furor his face reveal in the subsequent announcement of Nightingale's upcoming comeback album caused in the music industry and among the fans. He also complained about having to hire a second publicist because of Fastran's scandal he had gotten somehow involved in on the network, causing Sunny to look away in shame and keep his mouth tightly shut. Effie mostly talked about all the fried chicken wings she had eaten and all the sorts of beer she had drunk, as well as what types of nightmare creatures she had hunted, and fried, and ate. She also joked about all the propaganda events the government wanted her to participate in, and the various ways with which she had managed to dodge most of them. Sunny shared his experience of buying a house, and how it made him feel. Helmut got sentimental thinking about his beautiful armored doors that Effie had smashed through, and about his new, expensive, shiny refrigerator. Finally, Kai had to return to his schedule. Before they parted, though, he hesitated, then took out 2 colorful pieces of synthetic paper from his pocket with a very embarrassed expression on his face. Without saying anything, he handed the brochures to Sunny and Effie. Sunny took one, and stared at it with a confused expression. I gathered to be an invitation of some sort. On it was an image of 2 people standing back to back with swords in their hands, both of them extremely beautiful, in a professional kind of way. The guy was dark-skinned and handsome, with broad shoulders and an incredibly masculine face. The girl was thin and languid, with aslam figure that bordered on being gonder than Sunny had been in his outskirts days. She had a doll's face with big, glistening eyes and full, slightly parted lips. She was also wearing a very strange and impractical armor, a regal cloak, and a very expensive silver wig. What the hell is this? The title at the top of the brochure read, A Song of Light and Darkness, and right below it, an Asmiller font. Light shines brighter in the darkest of nights. Passion blossoms hotter in the cold heart of despair. Sunny stared at the piece of paper in his hand with wide eyes. Kai, my friend, what did you just hand me? Effie laughed. No way, they finished filming it. Kai coughed. Yeah, the premiere is in a week, actually. My agency arranged for me to attend and give a short speech. So, will you two come, please? Sunny shook his head. No, wait, no, actually, what is this thing? Effie looked at them with pity. Haven't you heard? They made a movie about us. I mean, about what happened on the Forgotten Shore, sort of. Have you not heard about all the casting news? Hes slowly shook his head. No. Then, Sunny frowned. Alright, it did it. But why would I ever want to go and watch this? I would rather eat another Morton mimic. Sorry, Kai, but I am not going. Effie looked at them with mischief and grinned. Oh, hey Sunny, do you remember how I say that I only had one condition to join you in the nightmare? Well, scratch that. Actually, I have two. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 465 to 465. Subjective value. 1083 words. After a while, Sunny and Effie returned Tohe's home, just in time to receive the delivery of the refrigerator. Two tall and broad-shouldered store workers unloaded it from the cargo hold of their delivery vehicle and placed the big box down without a bit of strain. After that, one of them smiled and asked, "Good day. Where should we put it?" Sunny waved AHAND. "Ah, no need. I'll wait myself." The loaders looked at them doubtfully, then simply shrugged and left after getting his signature. After the vehicle drove off, Sunny looked around, then easily lifted the heavy box and carried it inside the house without any effort whatsoever. Soon, the refrigerator was standing in the place where his old one used to be, the synthwood panels covering its doors blending in with the minimalist design of the kitchen. Effie and Sunny stared at it for a while, satisfied. Then, he said, "I like it, a lot." Quote. Effie smiled. "Yeah, really ties the whole room together, doesn't it? Well, in any case, I hope you won't break it again." After that, she yawned and said in a tired voice, "Ah, I'm beat. Time to retire to the dream realm. What about you?" Sunny thought for a few moments. Suddenly, a wide smile appeared on his face. "I have an errand Torin, but after that, I am going in, too." "Oh, wait, where are you going to sleep?" Effie shrugged. "Your guest room, where else?" He blinked. "Didn't you need a sleeping pod?" The former huntress giggled. "I have one. In your guest room. What? Why are you staring at me like that? Was I supposed to shuffle between the academy and your comatose body every day?" Sunny lingered for habit, then sighed. "Makes sense. I guess I should have put one there, to begin with. What are the chances of behaving mundane humans as guests?" Then, he waved Effie goodbye and headed for the door as he turned her wheelchair around and rolled toward the guest bedroom. He was very excited about what he was going to do. Sometime later, Sunny was in a beautifully lit store, pushing a shopping cart forward and slowly filling it to the brim with all kinds of food, as well as some other things. He was quietly whistling a cheerful tune, imagining all this stuff going into his new fridge. The contents of the cart would have cost more than he could ever dream to make, back when he had been living in the outskirts. But now, he could not only afford it, but even do so without having to count his money or feel apprehensive about the cost. Heckled just, buy as much you wanted, of any quality that you wanted, and bring it back home. His own home. Life had changed so much. After a while, Heffeld asked how he got enough. Now that he had the covetous coffer, he could not only bring soul shards out of the dream realm, but also bring stuff from the real world to the chained isles. That meant so much, an unlimited amount of spices, all kinds of snacks to make the long days of exploring less dreadful, various little things to make himself more comfortable. Hell, if he wanted to, he could even bring a tent and sleep in it like hacking. Incredible. Oh, this is simply incredible. Of course, not all of these things could be put in a general store, but he could visit other places or simply order stuff on the network. Asha was heading for the registers. A familiar voice suddenly pulled him out of his thoughts. Quote. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" Sunny froze for a moment, then slowly turned his head and looked to his left, down a long aisle he was passing. There, a pale girl of around 14 years was standing near a tall, graceful woman in her 40s. An 8-year-old boy with blonde hair and a bright smile was pushing a tub off ice cream into her hands. Sunny watched Rain and her family for a few moments, then turned away and continued on his way, leaving them behind. A quiet sigh escaped from his lips. At least she's doing fine. Well, of course she is. I've only been gone for a month. Why would anything happen simply because I wasn't here? Harry reached the register, then hesitated for habit, and turned back. When Harry turned, there were several tubs of delicious ice cream added to his cart. As light of dawn shined on the chained isles, Sunny appeared on the alder island of the sanctuary of Noctis. Hess stared at the sky, grimaced at the absence of the moon, and headed toward his room. Some time later, though, he emerged from there with a peculiar wooden box following him with the help of 8 small iron legs. With the covetous coffer in tow, Sunny walked into the garden, found a familiar rock, lifted the toothy box, and carefully placed it near himself. Then, he took out a single soul shard and put it where everyone could see. Soon, one of the awakened noticed him and approached. "Ah, Sunny, you are back, looking to sell some shards again." Sunny smiled. "Oh, yes, sure. But hey, that's not all. Brilliant Emporium has some new merchandise." The awakened looked at them with doubt, then asked, "Really? Like what?" Sunny's grin grew wider. "How lucky that you happened to ask. Let's see." He put his hand inside the coffer, which then somehow disappeared into the comparatively small box up the shoulder. Then, Sunny began taking out various items, speaking as she did so. "What do I have in store? Take a look for yourself. Toothpaste, soft, clean underwear, salt, pepper, and all kinds of spices. Personal hygiene products. Are you a woman? No. Have a female friend? Then. What? Really? Well, with the stuff I have here, that can be fixed. Oh, what is this? Would you look at that?" As more and more people gathered and stared at the absolutely mundane, but precious items that almost none of them had access to in the dream realm with something resembling lust in their eyes, Sunny sound gleamed with greed. By the way, Brilliant Emporium is also proud to announce the opening of advanced service, one our dedicated staff to bring something specific from the real world. No problem. Want to send something to the real world instead? That's not a problem, either, for just a small commission. I am going to get rich. So rich. Yes, soul shards were a rare commodity in the real world, but a good pair of underpants in the dream realm was, perhaps, even more valuable. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 466 to 466. A gracious invitation. 1042 words. Sunny spent every pleasant morning selling all the stuff he had brought to the dream realm to a crowd of awakened, each of them ravenous for the small comforts the real world could provide. Very few had a close enough relationship with a master or Saint Tobal to get these things here, and now places remote as Jane Isles. Things were slightly different in large citadels like Bastion or Ravenheart, but on the frontier, most people simply had to figure out ways to get by with makeshift replacements. Still, nothing could compare to the real deal. All in all, the Brilliant Emporium was performing splendidly. Of course, Sunny did not charge too much for the small necessities hustle, but I tatted up. He wouldn't charge a whole soul shard, even IFITWAS from a dormant creature, for a tube of toothpaste. But a few tubes, plus a toothbrush, plus some soap and a box of leaves, and a promise to bring some sugar with him the next time. That could work. Unlike before, he wanted soul shards instead of memories. He was going to take these shards to the waking world, where their value was much higher. Out there, soul shards came from only 2 sources. Some were brought back by Ascended and Transcendent from their journeys into the dream realm, and some were scavenged from the corpses of the nightmare creatures that had invaded reality through agate. They were always in short supply, because anyone in possession of a shard was more likely to oust it themselves than to sell it for credits. Saturating their soul core meant much more tone awakened than worldly currency. After all, dead men could not spend their riches. The demand, on the other hand, was extremely high, not only because all awakened strive to become stronger, but also because young sleepers, especially, were able to oust these shards to increase their chances of returning from their first venture into the dream realm alive. That was the reason why even Caster, Ashnopha prestigious legacy clan, had not entered the Forgotten Shore with his core already fully saturated. And that was the reason why Sunny was going to profit a lot from being in possession of his new favorite memory. The magnificent covetous coffer. After all, he, for better or worse, had news for the soul shards whatsoever. Heckle not consume them, so there was no choice to made between growing stronger himself or earning credits from others. He was going to sell the shards, buy memories, and feed them to Saint. This simple system was almost unfairly lucrative for Sunny, because memories, unlike shards, had no additional value in the real world. Every sleeper and every awakened could bring back memories from the dream realm and freely exchange them there. which did not mean that memories were cheap. In fact, they were extremely expensive, but the correlation between the number of soul shards he would have to sell and the number of memories he would be able to buy was very much in his favor. And of course, Sunny also didn't even need good memories. The worse, the better. The usefulness of a memory dictated its price, but did not affect the amount of shadow fragments Saint received from consuming them at all. His smile was growing wider and wider. 2 months, 3, max. That is how long it is going to take Meadow bring Saint to 200. And what happens next? Oh me, I can hardly wait to find out. His pleasant thoughts, however, were eventually interrupted by a shadow falling over him. Single quote ... Another customer. Sunny looked Yupan tense a little, recognizing the person in front of him. It was a young woman wearing a simple white garment, the same one that had escorted him to meet Master Roan before his journey to the shipwreck island. The representative of the White Feather clan. He suppressed a heavy sigh. What can I do for you? The young woman bowed slightly, then said in a neutral tone. Saint Tyrus invites you to share a meal with her, awakened sunless. Curses, that is what I have been afraid of. Sunny shivered slightly. What were the chances of him keeping all his secrets to himself during a conversation with the fearsome demigod in charge of the Chain Isles? Saints were creatures of another breed. It wasn't a coincidence that there were only a few dozen of them across all of humanity. They were not only the most powerful, but also the most skilled, strong-willed, brilliant, and deviously cunning members of the human race. Each was a force Tobrek owned with. Nothing less would suffice iPhone wanted to survive the harrowing trial of the third nightmare. Hue a sensor of his ability to fool such a person. Sunny forced out a weak smile. Quote ... It would be my pleasure. The young woman nodded, then turned around, obviously expecting him to follow. Sunny sighed, then dismissed the covetous coffer and stood up from the rock. It was time to face Skytide again. The graceful stone shadow perched on top of the tall menhirs of the sanctuary was just as Sunny had remembered it. The open pavilion at the very edge of the ancient monolith had not changed, as well. It was bathed in sunlight and exposed to winds, opening to a breathtaking view of the Chain Isles. The ivory tower floated far above, shrouded in white clouds. This time, there was a simple meal served for 3 people on the round table in the center of the pavilion, and both Master Roan and Saint Tyrus were preparing to eat. The young woman led Sunny to them, gestured to a free chair, and then moved to stand silently by Skytide's side. Sunny lingered for habit, then said awkwardly, greetings, Lady Tyrus, Master Roan. It is an honor to be invited to join you for dinner. Lunch. Yeah, to join you for lunch. Saint Tyrus simply nodded and didn't say anything, but Master Roan looked at them and grinned. Then, he gestured to the food on the table. What are you waiting for, Sunless? Dig in. Food is growing cold. Sunny hesitated for a moment, then smiled. If there was one rule he had tried to follow faithfully in his life, it was to never refuse free food. Master Roan didn't have to ask him twice. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 467 to 467. Dinner with a Saint. 1,221 words. It seemed that the conversation was not going to happen until after the meal, which suited Sunny fine. Not only did Hegeto enjoy some simple, but delicious food provided by the White Feather clan, but he also received a bit more time to think about what he was going to say and how. Sunny focused his attention on the plate in front of him, and after a few moments, a delighted smile found its way on his face. That's really good. Noticing it, Master Roan chuckled. You like it? Well, I am not going to say that I cooked it myself, because that would be Lee, but I'd hunt the beast with my own 2 hands. I also watched and gave very wise advice when Tyrus was planting the vegetables. Sunny choked. Tyrus planted. What? Skytide grew these vegetables herself. The image of the stern saint doing gardening did not fit into his mind at all. He threw a furtive glance at the unnaturally beautiful woman and swallowed. Yeah, can't imagine it. Saint Tyrus was calmly eating, not a single emotion appearing on her face. At the mention of her name, she looked at her husband for a second and then returned to her meal without reacting in any way. Sunny didn't know if she was simply like that around strangers or always aloof. In any case, it was hard to picture Skytide doing mundane things like gardening. Not knowing what to think of it, he lingered for a few moments, then said awkwardly. Quote ... Yes, thank you. It's very tasty. It was too good. In fact, the food was disappearing from his plate at a concerning speed, which meant that he had to sort out his thoughts fast. Basically, there were 3 things about his recent adventure that were better kept secret. The first one was the miraculous coins and their connection to the sanctuary of Noctis. The second was Mordred, despite the fact that Effie and Kai had easily believed him, telling total strangers that there were voices in his head was not the best of decisions. Besides that, Sunny got the feeling that the Lost Prince might have been in a so-friendly relationship with the emissaries of the Valor clan that resided on the Chain Isle. Skytide did not serve Valor directly, but her clan was still allied to the rulers of Bastion, to the point that one might have gone so far as to call them a vassal clan. And lastly, there was the whole thing about the Ebony and Ivory Towers, the connection between them, and the Seed of Nightmare. If it threatened to create Agate ATANY moment, he would have felt obligated to inform the White Feather clan, so that someone else could destroy it before that happened. But since the seed was far from blooming, he wanted evil for himself. However, Sunny suspected that he would have to sacrifice one of these secrets to keep the others intact. The question was, which one? Finally, the food was gone from their plates, and the young woman in white poured beautiful amber tea into their cups. Sunny blew on his, and glanced at Master Roan. So, not to appear impolite, sir, but to what do I owe the pleasure? Here it comes. He hesitated, then added, is it about my friends making a ruckus after I have gone on an unusually long expedition? You weren't too inconvenienced by having to look for me, were you? He was expecting a confirmation, but instead, a surprised expression appeared on the strapping master's face. Look for you? Why would we look for you? Noticing that Sunny was confused, remained silent for a moment, and then smiled. There must have been a misunderstanding. Nightingale and Raised by Wolves did, indeed, bring your disappearance to the attention of 4 clan. I was going to explore the places where you had been seen last to investigate, but luckily, Lady Cassia arrived at the sanctuary just in time. She informed us that you would return in a few weeks, so didn't have to worry. A tense smile froze on Sunya's face. She did. Well, I'm glad your time wasn't wasted, then. Damn it. Damn Cassie and her damn visions. How much does she know? He took a sip off to hide his expression behind the cup for a second. That changed things, on purpose or not. Cassie had helped him avoid the scrutiny of having to explain his absence to the White Feather clan. That, however, posed another problem. And that problem was Song of the Fallen herself. The timing of her visit to the sanctuary of Noctis and this strange action of hers were probably not a coincidence. What was she playing at? Or was he being too paranoid, looking for a meaning where there was none? Cassie was not some Machiavellian mastermind, after all. Unlike Sunny and Nephews both. At least she had not been. Putting down the cup, Sunny cleared his throat. But then, why did you invite me? Master Roan smiled and produced a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Oh, it was just to hand you this. Lady Cassia left you a message before leaving on an expedition with her cohort. Sunny tried to seem calm and nonchalant as she took the piece of paper and unfolded it. Inside, 2 words were written in awkward handwriting. Desecrated Grove. They were, without a doubt, left by Cassie. After becoming blind, writing was hard for her. Patsy the penmanship seemed so crude. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Desecrated Grove. Sunny had heard of that place. It lay west of the sanctuary, separated from ITBYA's stretch of long chains. The grove itself was not the most deadly off territories, but there were several corrupted creatures nesting on islands in close vicinity to it. Had Cassie known that he would want to speak to her, and left him a direction to here to find her? Why would she lead her cohort to that remote place, which was situated as far from the hollow mountains as Sone could get on the Chain Isles? Strange. Sunny folded the note, put it into the embrace of the puppeteer's shroud, and smiled. Thank you. Things like that weren't too strange. Since he had gone on a long expedition and Miss Cassie, who was planning to remain in the dream realm for a while herself, it was logical to communicate through messages. She could have just sent one to his communicator, though. Although, Ike was honest with himself, there was a big chance that he would ignore the message if she had. Sunny finished his tea, and then asked cautiously, so, I can go? Master Roan shrugged. Sure, it was nice to see you again, Sunless. I hear your Emporium is doing well. Sunny couldn't believe his luck. Expressing his gratitude, Harrow stole leave. Just dash at it, though, Saint Tyrus spoke for the first time. Piercing him with abnedrating gaze, she said evenly, quote, have you been to the Reckoning Island? Hef rose, under the stare of Sky Tide, twisting the truth didn't seem that wise anymore. Sunny hesitated, then said simply, yes. St. Tears looked at them for a few moments, then turned away. Next time someone asks, say no. Taken aback, Sunny stared at the stunningly beautiful woman for habit, gathered his courage, and then quietly asked, may I know, why? Sky Tide kept her gaze at the breathtaking vista of the chain aisles below them. Then, in a calm voice, she answered, you may not. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 468 to 468. Desecrated Grove. 1091 words. Sunny descended from the white feathers area in a complicated mood. I've never had doubts that the Lost Prince was harboring dire secrets. Now, there were none. Why else would St. Tears caution him to not speak about the mirror beast, who had seemingly been the only trace left of Murder's existence? Mordred had conquered the first nightmare when he was only 12. Such an individual, surely, would have been Asfamus's nephews back in the real world. And yet, Sunny had never heard of him, or of anyone who had accomplished the same feat. It was almost as if someone very powerful had purposefully erased any mention of the mysterious prince from history. How had Hellas his physical body, to begin with? And where was his spirit body in the dream realm? Did he even have one? He must have had evidence, at least. The pack Sunny had found on the Reckoning contained a detailed map of the Chain Isles, with the word, hope, written on it next to a question mark. Back then, he thought that the owner of the pack had been killed by the mirror beast. Now, however, he suspected that it had belonged to Mordred himself. So, the Lost Prince had at least visited the Chain Isles before disappearing. Was the great clan Valor complicit in his disappearance? Sunny had no real reason to come to that conclusion, other than the fact that the Chain Isles were in their sphere of influence, and that St. Tears hinted after knowledge of the nature of the mirror beast. But why hadn't she killed it herself? I am going to have to ask Mordred a lot of questions when he appears, which wasn't going to happen for many days, sadly. Until then, Sunny had other matters to attend to. Had glanced at the sun and judged that it had barely reached its zenith. The moon wasn't going to appear for a while, so, even though the desire to place his precious coins on the altar not on him, had decided to address the most pressing problem first. Cassie, no matter how reluctant Sunny was to face his former friend, he had to speak to her. Heck couldn't make plans for the future without knowing who would be his side. Asha challenged the second nightmare. And he absolutely needed to challenge it. Collecting essence was fine, but becoming a master would change the power dynamic between him and nephews much more. And even though creating future cores would be harder after he achieved a higher rank, being an ascended also meant that there would be much fewer things out there that could squash him like a bug. Not only among the nightmare creatures, but also among the humans. The more crumbs of information about the sovereign Sunny learned, the more disturbed he became. He was distrustful by nature, so he didn't believe that these hidden overlords would not try to exert their influence on him or try to destroy him one day, simply by virtue of being able to do so. And even without this threat, there were hundreds of masters in the world, which meant that there were hundreds of people who could kill him without breaking a sweat. But if he became a master himself, well, then there would only be a few dozen individuals he would have to be really wary of. Like St. Tears, Not to mention that, Asan ascended, he would be free to come and go from the dream realm as wished. He would even be able to abandon it forever, and never come back. Wouldn't that be his choice to have? So, the desecrated Grovitis. Sunny frowned, then returned to his room, took out his map from the covetous coffer, and spent some time adding all the details he remembered from Mordred's map onto it. Soon, he was in possession of an intricately detailed depiction of most of the Chain Isles on his hands, complete with descriptions of what dangers he was likely to meet and where. With its help, traveling to his destinations was going to be much safer. Sunny studied the route to the desecrated grove inside. Single quote. Shouldn't be too hard. I can probably reach it by morning and return to the sanctuary the next day at night when the moon is high in the sky. And finally get doused the coins he had bled so much to earn. Had dismissed the covetous coffer, stretched his limbs, and headed toward the exit from the sanctuary. The journey to the remote island that Cassie named in her note indeed turned out to be uneventful. Sunny rode the heavenly chains in the form of the shadow and traversed the islands on foot, avoiding any nightmare creature that crossed his path. The southern part of the Chain Isles was relatively safe, or at least safer than the northern part. Well, no surprise, it was bordering regions of the dream realm that had been tamed by humans more than a decade ago, while to the north there was nothing except for the dreadful Hollow Mountains. The desecrated grove itself was somewhat near the main route from one of the great chains, which connected all of the Chain Isles to the rest of the dream realm, to the sanctuary of Noctis. People who were either coming or leaving the region used that route to travel between the great chain and the citadel, so it was often patrolled by the white feather forces. Sunny traveled along the established route, then left it to go deeper into the dangerous wilderness of the Flying Islands. He carefully avoided all the places where corrupted nightmare creatures were known to dwell, and kept his eyes open for any sign of danger. However, nothing that couldn't be avoided happened. None of the islands Sunny wanted to cross were rising, so he even managed to escape having to enter the crushing. The sun rolled down over the horizon and disappeared, and the moon followed its example. As first light of dawn ignited in the east, Sunny flew through the shadows and then soared high into the air, cresting the edge of a large island and softly landing on its soil. The desecrated grove, he had arrived. Sunny let out a heavy sigh. He had almost hoped that some terrible monstrosity would attack him on the way, making it so wouldn't have to meet Cassie. The searing mess of emotions heffled toward her was much scarier than any nightmare creature could ever hope to be. At the end of the day, humans were much harder to deal with than monsters. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 469 to 469. Firekeepers. 1,173 words. The desecrated grove was a large island, its surface overtaken almost entirely by a forest of twisted, charred, dead trees. The ground was covered by a thick layer of ash, which was often thrown into the air by the strong winds. Gray flakes rained down from the sky. There were many nightmare creatures nesting in the dark forest, and although most of them were only of the awakened rank, one had to be careful to not get ambushed, surrounded, or stumble upon an especially ferocious abomination. Sunny couldn't even begin to guess why Cassie would choose such a place to establish a camp. However, he could already see the signs of human presence. There were 4 chains connecting the desecrated grove to their islands, but the one he himself had used was the most convenient. Any sane leader would have chosen the same route, and even though the crushing was capable of making anyone's path unpredictable, the other 3 were just too much of a risk. Cassie Sunny wasn't surprised to see human footprints leading toward the menacing wall of black and dead trees, already mostly covered by a new layer of ash. There were also signs of a battle, with several misshapen carcasses laying on the ground and showing clear signs of their soul shards being removed. Judging by the fact that they were only partially devoured by the scavenging nightmare creatures, Cassie's forward must have passed through no more than a week ago. Sighing, Sunny tied a piece of cloth around his mouth and nose, summoned the cruel sight, and started following the footprints. Soon, he entered the ashen veil of the twisted forest. His ability to see through any shadow proved to be invaluable once again. If not for that gift, he would have been scared witless, expecting a sudden attack to come from the surrounding darkness at any moment. With his sight, the shadow sense, and the ability to see all around himself with the help of the shadows, Sunny felt confident that nothing would be able to get close to him unnoticed, at least not on this comparatively tame island. But that was the thing about the dream realm. Even creatures that were supposed to be easy to deal with could kill you in a second if you weren't careful enough. Tame or not, everywhere in this godforsaken world was a potential death trap. As Sunny went deeper into the forest, he discovered more signs of Cassie's forward passing through. There were marks left behind by violent skirmishes, as well as several abandoned campsites. It seemed as how the firekeepers had been taking their time, slowly exploring the path ahead and moving their camp further and further into the depth of the desecrated grove after clearing a long stretch of it. Why travel here all the way from the Night Temple? She had to cross the entire region, getting away from the Hollow Mountains, only to get stuck on an unexceptional island. I just don't get it. Sunny was clearly missing something. With a slight frown, had turned into a shadow and glided through the darkness, covering much more distance with every minute than he had been on foot. Hess still preferred Tobakash's, though, sending one of the shadows ahead and moving slow enough to react in time. I have something unexpected happened. After an hour or so, Hefili found them. Cassie and her cohort were camped at a secluded clearing that was around halfway to the heart of the island, dangerously far removed from the edge. If the desecrated grove entered the ascent phase, the time window for them to get back to the chain before the crushing became deadly would be extremely narrow. Since it was early morning, most of the members were asleep, with only 2 lookouts standing watch with torches in their hands. Sunny observed them for a few seconds from the shadows and then sent his own forward. He recognized both of the watchmen, since they had spent a lot of time together during the struggle for the throne of the Bright Castle, as fellow members of Neff's faction. The Firekeepers were comprised of about 40 survivors of the Forgotten Shore, those who had decided against pledging their allegiance to the legacy clans that wanted to recruit them, as well as government, and had not become fully independent like Effie and Sunny had. Although Cassie was their nominal leader, she didn't come in the whole host herself. Instead, Neff's followers were divided into several cohorts, each operating in different regions of the Dream Realm. Firekeepers were not a formal organization, but more a loose alliance of people who shared similar beliefs and principles, the main being the hope that Changing Star was going to return alive one day. Sunny's shadow entered the circle of light created beyond the torches, glared at the lookout, and then waved at them. The young man stared at it with wide eyes. What the hell? The other swiftly turned, summoning her weapon. What is it? The first one remained silent for a moment, then sighed. Ah, crap. He massaged his temple, as if experiencing a headish. Quote. I think it's Sunny. There were 8 people in Cassie's cohort, every one of them a familiar face. Well, Sunny more or less knew all of the survivors of the Forgotten Shore, had fought with them back to back, so that wasn't surprising. What did surprise him, though, was how warm they welcomed him. Even if some were clearly displeased with having Toei Cupid early and wary of his entrepreneurial ambitions, which they had been amply subjected to during the war for the Bright Castle, they were still clearly happy to see Sunny. Soon, his shoulder began to hurt a little from all the friendly slaps it received. Would you look at that? 4 months on these damned islands, and this icy first time we actually crossed paths. How have you been, Sunny? Oh, I was so sad that we missed you in the sanctuary. Glad you decided to visit. Sunny smiled weakly and responded to their greetings, feeling both strangely warm inside and extremely uncomfortable with all the attention. Truth be told, he was glad to meet them again, too. Hesto couldn't quite believe that anyone had escaped the Forgotten Shore, let alone a whole 100 of young men and women, some of whom were in front of him right now. After the greetings were done, he looked around and raised an eyebrow. Sure, guys. Likewise. But where's Cassie? The Firekeepers glanced at each other, then one of them smiled. Oh, right, you must be to see her. Single quote. Not exactly. The girl who spoke shook her head and turned toward a path leading somewhere away from the camp. Let's go. I'll take you. Not too far from the camp, a deep hole was dug near the roots of one of the dead trees. Beside it, with her back to him, stood a delicate girl with pale blonde hair and an elegant rapier hanging in a scabbard on her belt. Hearing their footsteps, Cassie turned around. Asmal smile appeared on her face. Sunny, you've made it. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 470 to 470. Come winter. 947 words. Cassie had changed since the last time they met. Her hair was longer, and there was astrange silver half mask covering her eyes, its surface blind and intricately engraved. It matched the polished steel of the armor she was wearing on top of a midnight blue coat, comprised of a short cuirass, vambraces, greaves, and a segmented pauldron. The quiet dancer hung on her belt, but there was also a long dagger opposite it, its guard twisting upward. What changed most of all, however, was her demeanor. The blind girl seemed much older, somehow, firmer, poised, but also weary, as if pressed down upon by the weight of years. What years? She's younger than me. Sunny struggled a little, then pretended to smile, too, for the benefit of the young Firekeeper who no doubt expected a warm reunion. No one knew what had happened between them, after all. Yeah, I received your note, cryptic as it was. And here I am, in the flesh. The girl who had led him to Cassie glanced at them, then made an excuse and went back to the camp, tactfully deciding to remove herself from what she thought was going to be an emotional meeting of 2 old friends. Former friends, really? Sunny hesitated a little, then asked. So, how have you been? Cassie sighed, then turned back to the excavated roots of the charred tree. After a while, she spoke. Not so good, actually. Her voice sounded distant. We have tried to venture into the Hollow Mountains, as you must know. But it was hopeless. That place is pure death, for anyone who dares set foot into the mist. We hoped to find a way back to the Forgotten Shore. In the end, however, we were lucky to simply escape alive. Cassie remained silent for habit, then asked, what about you? Sunny grinned. Me. Oh, I've never been better. With that, he summoned the covetous coffer, fished out some fresh, fragrant fruit from it, and sat down on a nearby stump. Taking a big bite out of a juicy peach, heckled it with gusto, and then glanced at the blind girl. Oh, sorry, I only brought enough for one. Yes, Sunny knew that he was being ridiculously petty, but so what? Pettiness was his middle name, figuratively speaking. So, you failed to return to the Forgotten Shore, and now, what are you doing exactly? Why are you digging up trees in this vile forest? Cassie smiled a little, then answered evenly. Quote. I am looking for something. Then, she turned away from the hole and faced him. Yes, Eagle the White Feather Clan that you will return alive. No, I did not see a vision of where you were, and what you did in the past month. Sunny stared at her with a dark expression. What ice this? She can read minds now. Quote. And no, I can tread minds. If you must know, my second ability allows meadows and so I will happen in the next few seconds. That's I can walk around without a cane, and knew what you were going to say. Hegermaced. That's going to be very annoying, I think. Sunny looked at Cassie, reevaluating her armor and weapons. With an ability like that, she might have become a very formidable fighter. Or not. He didn't really understand how it worked, to tell the truth. So, he's curiously, does that mean that you can see now? Cassie shook her head. No, not exactly. But if I want to take a step forward, and since falling into our ravine, I can walk around it instead. If I sense being pierced by Asward, I can try to deflect it. And if I sense being asked a question, I can answer it. Had thought for habit, then said. So, what is my next question? The blind girl simply shook her head. I didn't need Taoist soul lessons to guess. You want talk now how I knew that you will come back to the sanctuary in one piece. Sunny finished his fruit, threw the pit into the hole, then smiled. Indeed, if you did not spy on my recent adventures, then how did you know that I wasn't going to eat? Cassie lingered for habit, then turned away. After a while, she said, it's still spring. Heskal, what does that have to do with anything? You knew that I would be fine because it's spring. Cassie smiled. Yes, I knew that you would indeed. Because, you see, she paused for a moment, and then said calmly. Quote. I already saw you die, in winter. Both Ofus, actually. After Cassie dropped that bomb, Sunny simply stared at her for a whole minute, his eyes wide and the words refusing to come out of his mouth. Finally, he gritted his teeth and hissed. What the hell? You saw USDIE? Cassie sighed, then gave him a simple nod. Yes, Sunny growled. Elaborate. The blind girl hesitated for a little while, then asked evenly. Are you sure you want talk now? You've seen what happened the last time I shared my vision with someone, and tried to challenge fate. A dark, resentful expression appeared on Sunny's face. With his voice full of anger, Hespat. Who cares? Tell me what you saw this instant. Cassie sighed and turned to face him. All right, but remember what happened to the 3 Ofus before. How I tried to deceive fate, but were played by fate instead. She grew quiet for a moment, and then said, this is what I saw. There was a crumbling island falling into the sky below, and the 2 Ofus, bloodied, mangled, and weak, falling down with it. It was snowing. Above us, a giant bird flew, wreathed in thunderclouds. It was fighting a terrifying black wyvern, their blood falling down like rain. Then the darkness swallowed us, and we were gone. Cassie looked down, then added solemnly. That was how we died. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 471 to 471. Quid pro quo. 1037 words. When Cassie was done speaking, Sunny remained silent for a bit. Then, he said, anything else? More details. The blind girl shook her head. Because of the blizzard, it was hard to see what surrounded the crumbling island, and it was already too damaged to recognize it. So, no more details. You were wearing a metal armor, I think. Not the puppeteer shroud. Sunny massaged his temples with a bleak expression on his face. Well, it's not as bad as I expected. Cassie tilted her head a little. It's not. A dark smile appeared on his lips. Well, already know that your visions are easy to misinterpret. You haven't seen USDIE, really, right? The light go out 04 eyes, our bodies being torn apart, and soon. You just saw us badly injured and falling into the darkness. So what? I have already fallen into the sky below once, and here I am, good as new. The blind girl hesitated. You fell into the sky below. Sunny waved AHAND dismissively. Yes, but that doesn't matter. Wait, no, actually, it does matter. It's the reason I came to see you. I have almost forgotten because of this charming revelation of yours. After that, I grew silent, thinking about Cassie's vision of their death. Despite Sunny's bravado, inside, QASN as nonchalant about each wanted to appear. Yes, her visions had been misleading in the past, but not all of them. Some were as straightforward as possible. And yes, although he had already gone through the endless void below the chain isles once, there was no guarantee that he would survive IT a second time, not unless he had chosen Totoso himself. After the twisted rock was destroyed by the crushing, Sunny managed to survive due to 3 reasons. One of them was Mordred, one was that he had already been near the tear, and the other was the Where is Me enchantment that he had used in a moment of desperation. That enchantment had almost killed him, itself, and only failed Totoso because his already exhausted shadow essence ran out just at the right time. Ife's reserves had not been depleted, and he was forced to enter staring into the eternity of fate for a few seconds more. His mind would have been destroyed completely. Ife was thrown into the sky below once more, away from the tear. There would be very slim chance of him finding the rift in the ocean of divine flame again. Especially Ife was as badly wounded as Cassie implied, and there were giant birds fighting wyverns in the sky above. So, what he had Toto now was, well, what the hell was he supposed Toto? The vision did not provide any actionable information. The only thing Sunny could think of was to work really hard to get himself a flight-capable memory or echo before winter. And maybe make a will. He sighed. So, what have you been doing to prevent the two Ofus from dying? How can you calmly dig around in the mud, knowing what is going to happen? Cassie lingered for a moment, then smiled. In fact, I am digging around in the mud for that very reason. Sunny snorted. What are you hoping to find there? A pair of wings. She shook her head. No, I am just hoping to find a preserved root. A root. What can a root Toto save us from dying? He kept quiet for habit, then said, all right, suit yourself. Anyway, I wanted to talk with you about something. Cassie looked into the depths of the forest, then nodded. About what? Sunny gathered his thoughts, then explained. I have found a nightmare seed. Avery's special one, that contains Avery's special second nightmare. And I want to challenge it after the winter solstice. Actually, scratch that. I want to challenge it by the end of the autumn. His initial plan was to give himself and his companions 7 months to prepare, but considering what Cassie saw happening in winter, these plans had to change. Whatever it was that she predicted, facing a Tassel Master would be much more desirable than facing Nita's unawakened. Unless her vision took place inside the nightmare, of course. Regardless, now, had decided to return to the ivory tower before the autumn was over. 6 months was a tight amount of time to get ready, but not so different from his initial plan. Heck would make it work, provided that other people whom he wanted to take with him would, too. That seed ice also located in Avery's special place. In fact, it's right above our heads, in the ivory tower. I found a way to get there without being killed by the crushing, although that other path is, arguably, just as dangerous. Sunny pointed down. It is in the sky below. Effie and Kai are coming to the chain isles to join me. We hope that you will challenge the nightmare with us, too. Oh, and we'll need your help getting into the night temple. There's an item we need to retrieve there. Cassie faced him and remained silent for a while. With her eyes being hidden by a mask and her face unmoving, it was hard to tell what she was feeling or thinking about. Finally, she said, you want me to join? After what I have done to you? Unseen to her, a cold expression appeared on Sunny's face. Hell looked at the blind girl for a long time, then shrugged. Why not? Wouldn't have to be friends to go into a nightmare together? Wouldn't have a need to like each other? What can just be temporary allies? Wasn't that what I was to you, anyway? If you can handle that, so can I. I didn't mean being used, as long as I get Taosu in return. Pretty simple. Cassie turned away and didn't say anything for a few moments. Then, she answered, all right, I will go to the night temple with you, and help you conquer the second nightmare. But, I want your help with something in return. Sunny raised an eyebrow. My help? With what? The blind girl hesitated for a second, and then said, you have been to the shipwreck island, haven't you? The creature that dwells there, and a few months, I want you to help me kill it. Share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 472 to 472. Worthy reward. 1011 words. Sunny stared at the blind girl with surprise clearly written on his face. Allowing this surprise to seep into his voice, hissed. The vine creature. You want to kill that thing? Why would she want to attempt Toto something that dangerous? Cassie nodded. Yes. Hesh shook his head. That bastard sprawls through the entire island, its vines buried underground. Itis corrupted, which means that our weapons will barely be able to cut it. And, if that was not bad enough, the vines produce clouds of deadly poison. Are you sure that you want to attack it? The blind girl lingered for a few moments, then answered calmly. It is a corrupted monster, indeed. It is terrifying and lethal, yes. But I am so that what can destroy it, with enough preparation. Everyone has weaknesses, after all. That creature is susceptible to fire, for example. There must be other things we might be able to exploit, too. Sunny thought for a while, then shrugged. Fine, I will help your cohort fight the monstrosity on the shipwreck island. I will not promise that we will succeed, though. Cassie sighed. Then we have a deal. My cohort and I will remain in the desecrated grove until our business here is in. I expect it to take a month, at least. Maybe more. After, we will return to the sanctuary, recuperate, and proceed to the shipwreck island. She paused for a moment, and then added, and then, I will help you challenge the second nightmare. Sunny smiled. I freed before that, you mean? The blind girl turned back to the roots of the dead tree. Quote. Yes, I freed before that. On his way back to the sanctuary, Sunny had a lot to think about. Firstly, there was the fact that he would have to cooperate with Cassie again, which made him feel all sorts of complicated emotions. The manner of the relationship, at least, was said clear. It was purely alliance of convenience and nothing else. Heckle put away his resentment for the sake of mutual benefit. After all, Sunny could be a very pragmatic person when he needed to be. Secondly, there was the perspective of returning to the wreck of the ancient ship, this time Toto battle with the vine monster that ruled over the island. Sunny knew very well how dangerous that thing was, so he had a lot of preparations thought off. He wanted to come out of that fight in one piece. The divine flame augmentation of the cruel sight, however, was going to come in very handy. And lastly, there was the ominous prediction that Cassie had made about both of them dying sometime in winter. Or falling into the sky below, at least. That, he didn't even know what to think about that. However, Sunny was not going to let this vision affect his decisions. The last time he had tried to act on the knowledge received through Cassie's prophetic gift did not end well for him, or anyone for that matter. The best thing Toto was to occupied in his mind, but continued to act as if nothing had changed. At least he thought that this was the best course. Tired and mentally exhausted from the long journey to and back from the desecrated grove, Sunny approached the sanctuary of Nakus in the middle of the night. His shadow essence reserves were almost depleted, and his head buzzed from all the thoughts swarming inside of it. Landing on the soft grass and hearing the familiar sound of water falling over the edge of the island, Sunny gritted his teeth. Forget about it, for now. First things first, the moon was high in the sky, which meant that he was finally going to get his sweet, enchanting reward. His desire to find the source of the miraculous coins the dead chain worm had brought with it to the Iron Hand Island started this whole ordeal, and now, the coins would be its end. His prize was waiting for him up ahead. Entering the sanctuary, Sunny walked through the empty garden and approached the clear pond in its center. Stopping for a couple of moments to make sure that no one was watching him, Heathen crossed the stone path leading to the small island in its center. There, a white altar stood in the shade of the tree, and an obsidian knife lay on its surface. The moment of truth, Sunny summoned the covetous coffer, took out one of the gold coins out of it, and placed it on the altar. The coin shimmered, reflecting the moonlight, and then disappeared. Your shadow grows stronger. A big smile appeared on Sunny's face. Summoning the runes, he read, Shadow Fragments, 224 2000ths. It works. Initially, Sunny thought of going about using the coins in a slow and deliberate manner, throwing arrows and orso on the altar each time he had to return to the real world, to minimize the chances of being noticed and ace arising suspicion. But now that the reward was in his sight, had decided against it. No, he wanted all of it, right now. He deserved it. Putting the wooden box on the altar, had turned it to the side, and then put his hand inside. A moment later, a stream of golden coins flowed onto the white surface. Then, they all started to disappear. Your shadow grows stronger. Your shadow grows stronger. Your shadow grows stronger. In the end, Sunny ended up sacrificing all 1400 orso coins to the altar. Frightened to believe that it actually happened, he summoned the runes again, then rubbed his eyes, and read the line describing his shadow fragments 3 times in a row, just to make sure that his eyes weren't deceiving Tohim. Luckily, they weren't. The runes now showed, Shadow Fragments, 1657 2000. ID it. In the first 2 months on the Chain Isles, Sunny worked really hard to hunt down nightmare creatures and slay them. And yet, he had only been able to collect 200 fragments. His last journey, harrowing as it had been, though, gave him so much more. A wide grin appeared on Sunny's face. Single quote ... Who said that Greed Isison? It's Saber2, a god Ember 2, Isay, share to your friends. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave, Chapter 473 to 473, Mobius Loop. 1170 words. Because of the sudden influx of so many shards, Sunny got disoriented and swayed. His body was subtly rebuilding itself, growing stronger, more powerful. The difference was stark enough for him to feel it with every fiber of his being. As awakened absorbed soul shards, or shadow fragments, in his case, the capacity of their cores grew and their physical capability was slightly enhanced. Usually, it happened as such small increments that the difference was hard to judge, but this time, Sunny had done something pretty preposterous and consumed 1400 shadow fragments all at once. He wondered if anyone else in history had accomplished the same feat. Not likely. Grabbing the edge of the altar to support himself, he knew the strange and euphoric sensation as best Ash could. How could anyone dose the gathing, if, as far as Sunny knew, everyone except Nephies and him were limited to having only one core? They wouldn't have been able to absorb this much. Arg, back on the Forgotten Shore, Sunny had gone from having almost no shadow fragments to fully saturating his core Tathausen. In the process, he went from being no different from a mundane human to the pinnacle of humanly possible to breaking past those limits. Becoming an awakened had elevated him even further above what was considered normal. He was much stronger and faster than any mundane human could ever hope to be, and capable of enhancing his prowess even more with essence, achieving truly superhuman might. And now, he went through a transformation that was similar in scale to his rise on the Forgotten Shore, becoming so much more powerful. In fact, he was now probably the strongest awakened both in the waking world and in the dream realm, with the exception of those whose aspects directly enhanced their physique. And even then, he could still double, even triple his physical ability with the help of the shadows. Insane. Sunny drew a native breath, then silently flexed his muscles, feeling a new strength course through his veins. Hefel, incredible, incredibly strong, incredibly fast, incredibly resilient. But that wasn't all. The capacity of both of his shadow cores was also dramatically enhanced, almost doubling in a matter of seconds. Therefore, his reserves of shadow essence were now also much deeper. That meant that he could fight at the peak form for longer, use the active enhancements of his memories more, remain in the form of a shadow for a bigger amount of time, control his shadows at a larger distance, and travel further when using shadow step. In short, Sunny had just become even more effeminate. Slowly getting accustomed to his new and improved physique, Heck couldn't help but smile. Now that he had finally made use of the miraculous coins, his previous disaster of an expedition came into perspective. Despite how much he had suffered and how close he had brushed with death, Eagle felt worth it somehow. His goal was to grow stronger, and Sunny had just made a big step toward that goal. It felt good. While Sunny was consumed with triumphant thoughts, his gaze fell on the obsidian knife that lay on the altar. He lingered for a while, then cautiously reached with his hand and touched the cold stone handle. Will it work? That knife had remained on the altar of the sanctuary for as long as shamans had lived there. Pretty much every awakened that had ever set foot into the citadel had tried to raise it off the white surface at least once, including Sunny. But none of them succeeded. The knife seemed to weigh more than the entire island itself, as if it was glued to the altar. No matter how much people tried, no one had ever managed to move it even by a millimeter. However, when Sunny used the miraculous coins for the first time, he seemed to have noticed that the obsidian knife moved a little. Therefore, he had made a conclusion that if he were to place enough coins on the altar, the knife might become detached from it and fall into his hands. Holding his breath, Sunny wrapped his fingers around the handle. Single quote ... Here goes nothing. Putting all of his strength into the pull, had tried to lift the obsidian blade of the altar. The knife, however, offered no resistance at all. It behaved like any knife would, easily sliding off the white stone, which then caused Sunny to lose his balance and tumble to the ground in a graceless roll. Sitting up, Hess stared at the knife in his hand with wild eyes. Then, Hess shuddered. Crap. Sunny half expected for the entire sanctuary to suddenly plunge into the sky below, or for the gateway to stop functioning. That's he wanted to just lift the knife a little, and then place it back down if something had gone awry. Instead, he was now a few steps away from the altar, with no way of getting back to it immediately. Luckily, none of his fears came true. Despite the fact that the obsidian knife had left its usual spot on the altar, the island seemed fine. Everything was just as it had been a few seconds ago. He exhaled with visible relief. Well, good. I wouldn't want to mess things up too bad for everyone here on the Chain Isles. Rising to his feet, Sunny looked at the obsidian knife. It seemed to have been cut from a single piece of black stone, with its blade sharpened and polished. There wasn't anything special in how the knife looked. In fact, it seemed a little bit crude, almost primitive. There was also one little problem. The knife did not turn into a memory. Sunny had expected it to disintegrate into a rain of sparks and enter his core, just like Weber's mask had done, or like shard memories behaved when raised by a new wielder. Mordred had mentioned something to that effect when speaking about the ivory knife in the Night Temple. Had told Sunny that one had to spill blood on the black altar to receive a memory of the blade that rested on its surface. But the obsidian knife did no such thing. It just remained in his hand, as material and palpable as one could imagine. What was even stranger, though, was that the knife didn't have your Tohei Vaspelwev. It was, without a doubt, a magical item. Sunny could feel that it was, even if he didn't know what properties it entailed. However, when he looked beneath the surface of the knife, he didn't see the familiar pattern of ethereal strings weaving themselves around anchoring lights. What he saw instead was just brilliant radiance, asked how the knife was filled to the brim with soul essence. And in that radiance was just a single string. It wasn't the same type of ethereal string, though. It was a, Sunny frowned, a string of fate. A single string of fate was somehow placed inside the obsidian knife, folding on itself endlessly, with its two ends connected to create a perfect, never-ending circle. Sunny stared at the strange string for a while, and then furrowed his brow. Single quote ... Now, what is that all about? Share to your friends. Enjoying the site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave, Chapter 474 to 474, Truth Be Told. 1160 words. Sunny studied the obsidian knife for a while, and concluded that he had no idea what this thing was supposed to be capable of. It wasn't Tamamori, and it didn't have a weave, so neither the spell nor his own ability to perceive and somewhat understand such things could help him. The only thing Sunny knew for certain was that someone had plucked a string from the tapestry of fate and placed it inside the knife, making a circle out of it for some mysterious purpose. Everything else was going to have to wait until the next time he heard from Mordred. The Lost Prince was bound to talk now more about the obsidian knife, since he seemed to talk now a lot about the chain dials and their past in general. Now, however, Sunny had to deal with another problem. He had to explain the disappearance of the knife to the White Feather clan, somehow. Come morning, or a tiny moment, really, if someone decided to leave the dream realm or entered it in the middle of the night, people would become aware that the knife that no one had been able to lift or move was now gone. Sunny had no doubt that it was not going to take a long time for them to figure out that it was him who had taken it. And after that, what Toto? In the end, Heck came up with a really crazy idea, something that he would have never even considered, in normal circumstances, something that went against his very nature. He went and told Master Roan the truth. Well, the part that had Toto with the miraculous coins, to be precise. Visiting the White Feather compound in the middle of the night was a bit strange, but luckily for him, the older man turned out to be UP. He was preparing to leave Patrol, and Soros early to make the necessary preparations. After Sunny was done talking, the mighty Griffin Rider stared at them for a while with a perplexed expression. Then, he stood to take a look at the knife. Sunny reluctantly handed the obsidian blade over and watched nervously as Master Roan inspected it. He was really hoping that the White Feather clan would not decide to keep it. There were very few things Sunny could do if he did. Finally, the strapping master returned the obsidian knife to him and asked curiously. So you'll manage to lift it by using Noctis coins on the altar? Sunny nodded. Yeah, wait, you know about the coins. Master Roan nodded. A few have been found here and there on the isles over the years. It seems that this was the preferred currency people who lived here thousands of years ago used. No one had ever discovered a literal treasure trove of them, though, as you did. Heth thought for Abbott, and then smiled. Actually, I think I have one stashed somewhere. Wait here for Abbott, alright. With that, Roan disappeared into the stone chateau, and then returned 10 minutes later, holding a familiar golden coin in his hand. Found it. I used to carry it with me lot before, asa lucky charm. Let's go. Together, they returned to the altar island. The first thing Master Roan did was glance at the moon, and then place the coin on the altar. Once again, it gleamed and disappeared, leaving a bewildered expression on the handsome man's face. All damn, I just received Abbott of Soul Essence. You were right. Hesh shook his head in astonishment, to think that these coins had such odds all this time, and no one was the wiser. Good job, Sunless. Then, Master Roan hesitated for a few moments, and asked, can you place the knife back on the altar? Sunny did Ashwas asked, and then watched as mighty Griffin Rider used all of his formidable power in a vain attempt to lift the obsidian blade off the white surface. When he was done with that futile attempt and stepped back to catch his breath, Sunny simply took hold of the handle and retrieved the knife without any problem. Interesting. Then came the moment of truth. Sunny tensed Ashwaited for the Alderman's decision. After thinking about it for a while, Master Roan said, well, I don't know if you know this, Sunless, but there is a sacred rule among us awakened in the dream realm. The sanctity of this rule is unassailable and beyond reproach. And that rule is, finders, keepers. Sunny blinked. What? The strapping master grinned. So you didn't have to worry about either me or Tears taking that knife from you. Then, however, his smile dimmed. Quote. Other people, though, might not be as reasonable. Even if New knows what power this thing has, or if there even is anything special about it, someone might get too excited and act in a regrettable manner. So I'd advise you to put the knife back on the altar, until the time you feel like using it. Sunny considered his words and had to admit that this, indeed, would be the best decision for now. Master Roan helped him confirm that no one else would be able to take the knife, and carrying IT around before venturing into the nightmare had no benefit. Summoning the memory of how exactly the obsidian blade had been placed on the altar, Heaven died in its previous spot and took a step back. Master Roan nodded. Good choice. Please, don't WSIFYOU find out anything about its purpose, at least if it is anything Toto with the well-being of the sanctuary. If need be, we'll compensate you fairly to either take the knife off your hands or lend it for Abbott, if that's what you prefer. Sunny agreed to this condition, since it sounded reasonable. With that out of the way, the strapping Griffin Rider looked at them with sparks dancing in his eyes. So, what are you going to do now? Sunny frowned. What a weird question. Go home, take a shower, deal with some real-world business. Why, what are you going to do? Master Roan laughed. What do you mean, what I am going to do? I am going to go on my patrol, and then I'll go coin hunting, of course. I suspect that everyone in the sanctuary is going to be searching for Noctis coins like madmen for quite some time after that discovery of yours. People are going to get really busy. Sunny remained silent for Abbott, and then said in a very serious tone. Good luck, then. Oh, and one thing, if you find a big chest full of them, make your griffin stomp on it a few times before coming closer. Better yet, do that to every chest you encounter in the future. Never trust a chest not to eat you, is what I am trying to say, I sure won't. With that, he said goodbye to the handsome master, placed his hand on the altar, and returned to the real world. There was a lot he had to do here. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report. Shadow Slave. Chapter 475 to 475. A few things to do. 1072 words. Sometime later, Sunny was in his kitchen, eating the breakfast he had just prepared. He was thinking of all the things on his to-do list. They were, in a particular order, selling the soul shards he had brought with him from the dream realm, and setting a passable method to sell more in the future, returning to the dreamscape to participate in duels on the professional arenas to practice shadow dance and feed the mantle of the underworld with victories, observing Rain and thinking of a way to deal with that whole situation, learning how to properly fight with a spear, visiting Neff, writing a report about the Noctis coins for teacher Julius. There were probably more things he had to do, but was forgetting. But he already had enough on his plate. Finishing the breakfast and staring toward the door of the guest bedroom, where Effie still slept while her spirit wandered the dream realm, Hesh shook his head and went out to sit on the porch drank some delicious tea. It was early morning. Sunny enjoyed the pleasant view of the terrace district, watched as Rain walked to the public transport hub on her way to school, and then activated his communicator. He was going to start with the simplest of tasks, navigating to the market section of the network. He habitually input his identification number to access the awakened section of it. Sunny had browsed the wares there before, even IF back then had barely had enough money to buy anything. Today, however, things were different. Today, he was approaching the network also seller, not also buyer. Sunny entered soul shards as keywords and stared at the listings, appreciating the number of zeros and their prices. It seemed as how the value of shards was not uniform. Of course, the higher rank shards cost much more. But people, strangely, also seemed to care about what nightmare creature the crystal came from and how it had been defeated. What the hell? Apparently, there were collectors among the wealthy mundane humans who were very interested in this sort of thing. Some superstitious awakened also believed, for some reason, that absorbing bad shards would be detrimental to the purity of their souls. Weirdos. Sunny didn't know a lot of things, but one thing he did know was that there was not a single awakened out there with a pure soul. Even the best of them were murderers by nature, and their hearts were painted black by the nightmares they had experienced. Not to mention that there were no bad or good soul shards. They were all pretty much the same, coming from terrible monsters and earned through bloodshed. Anyway, that was something he was going to consider when creating his own listing. After getting the gist of the pricing, Sunny opened the form to create his own digital shop. Without thinking too much, he edited Brilliant Emporium and went on to fill out the entire form. Then, it came the time to put his soul shards into the auction. Sunny wrote simply, 4 soul shards coming from a fallen devil, Mordant Mimic. The creature was killed and eaten by the proprietor of the Brilliant Emporium himself. Before that, the Mordant Mimic had been pretending to be treasure chests and devouring those lured by the promise of treasure. In the end, it bit off more than it could chew. Satisfied with that, he finalized the listing and stared at it for Abbott, as if expecting someone to bid instantly. However, nothing of the sort happened. With ASIGH, Sunny deactivated the communicator and went back inside. Soon, I will bear it soon. It took several days for all 4 of his soul shards to sell. After that, Sunny had to arrange secure delivery, which was somewhat overheadish on its own. Overall, the process took too much time from his already packed schedule. Halso felt that he was missing some crucial knowledge on how to make his business really boom. Even though the product he was trying to sell was first class, there were not a lot of fallen rank soul shards out there. Compared to dormant and awakened ones, the bidding had not really taken off. Had it make a sizable amount of money, but not as sizable as it could have been. Still, it was enough to purchase a couple of cheap lower rank memories. Sunny simply looked for the most useless ones, which no one else would ever want to buy, and made the minimum offer. Whoever it was selling them must have been happy beyond belief to finally bear rid of these things. Sunny was going to off the memories to Sane immediately after receiving them, but before that, had spent a lot of time training with the cruel sight in his underground dojo. He had a solid understanding of how to use a short sword, but a spear was alien beast to him. Even though Sunny knew the basic rules of combat technique and could perform somewhat effectively while wielding any weapon, he was far, far away from mastering them. How fortunate it was then, that he had a renowned spear master, raised by wolves herself, crashing in his guest bedroom. Granted, she couldn't really spar with him due to her condition, but he had Sane for that. In the end, the three of them spent a lot of time in his basement. Effie was observing and explaining to him what Toto, how to do it, and most importantly, what not Toto. Sane served Ash's opponent in the mighty enemy to polish his nascent skill against. And Sunny found himself once again in the role of a willing punching bag. It was just like in that week they had spent in the hidden chamber of the ruined cathedral in the Dark City. Sunny even got nostalgic, remembering how cozy and nice things had been back then. Now, however, things were much better. Not only was there an unlimited amount of delicious food they could eat during the breaks in his training, there were even medicine and ice baths to ease the pain in his bruised and beaten body. Training with Sane was really effective, but she really didn't know how to pull her punches. Just like that, a few days passed, and then, something that Sunny had been dreading for a while finally, and inevitably, happened. It was time to accompany Kai to the premiere of the Song of Light and Darkness. Share to your friends. Enjoying this site? Support us via PayPal, Visa, MasterCard or crypto. Your donations help cover site maintenance and hosting costs. Tap the middle of the screen to reveal reading options. If you find any errors, non-standard content, ads, redirect, broken links, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Report.